They forced her to kneel in the mud before the entire pack. Lyra Vance spat in her hair and called her a stain on Blackstone blood. Mara Vale didn't cry. She never did. But when the Alpha King's boot stopped in front of her, when his shadow fell across her shoulders and the sealed bracelet under her wrist began to burn like a second heartbeat, every wolf in that clearing understood they had just made the worst mistake of their lives. Stay with me until the end of this story, because what Mara becomes on the night of the blood moon will change everything. Hit that like button and drop the name of the city you're watching from in the comments so I know where my wolves are tonight. The morning Kyle Draven was supposed to arrive, Mara Vale was on her knees behind the kitchens of the Blackstone longhouse, scrubbing blood out of a deer hide with a brush that had lost half its bristles. The blood was 3 days old. Someone, probably one of the young warriors, probably on purpose, had thrown the hide onto the stack meant for cured leather instead of the rot pile, and by the time Dina found it, the stink had crawled into the walls of the curing shed. Dina slapped Mara twice for it, once on each cheek, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to make a point in front of the other kitchen women. And then she shoved the hide into Mara's arms and told her to have it clean before the sun cleared the pines. The sun had cleared the pines an hour ago. Mara bent lower over the hide and worked the brush in short, mean circles. Her knuckles were split. The lye was eating into the cuts, and every time she shifted her weight, the cold from the packed dirt soaked another inch up into her knees. She didn't stop. Stopping was worse than the pain. Stopping meant someone walked by and saw her not moving, and then it became a whole thing. And the whole thing was always about her. And she had learned a long time ago that the only way to disappear was to keep your hands busy and your eyes down. You missed a spot. Mara didn't look up. She knew the voice. Everybody in Blackstone knew that voice. Deaf now too, Lyra Vance said. On top of everything else? Mara kept scrubbing. Morning, Lyra. Morning, Lyra, Lyra said in a high, stupid voice that was supposed to be Mara. Two of the girls behind her laughed. There were always 2 girls behind her, sometimes 3. Mara had stopped trying to learn their names years ago because the names changed, but the laugh was always the same. That wet, eager laugh of wolves who knew they weren't the one being hunted today. Lyra's boot came down on the edge of the hide. She leaned her weight into it. The brush caught, skipped, and tore across Mara's knuckles. A fresh bead of red welled up over the old scabs. Oops, Lyra said. It's fine. Look at me when I'm talking to you. Mara looked up. Lyra Vance was 21 years old, and she was beautiful, the way a knife is beautiful. Clean lines, nothing wasted, made for one job. She had her father's pale eyes, and her mother's bone structure, and a mouth that had never, in Mara's entire memory, said a kind thing to anyone weaker than it. Today she was already dressed for the welcome. Green wool, silver at the collar, her hair braided back in the double plait that only beta blood was allowed to wear. She smelled like cedar oil and something floral. Mara didn't have a name for her, something the traders brought up from the south and sold for more coin than Mara would see in a year. The king gets here at midday, Lyra said. I heard. Did you hear the rest of it, or do I have to say it slow? Say it however you want. Lyra's eyes narrowed. It was the wrong answer. Mara knew it was the wrong answer the second it left her mouth, and for half a breath she thought about taking it back, softening it, apologizing for nothing the way she'd been apologizing for nothing her entire life. And then she didn't. She didn't know why. Something about the lie in her knuckles. Something about the hide. Something about the word midday, and the way her wrist had been aching since she'd woken up. A deep bone ache she'd never felt before, right under the place where the old leather cord sat against her skin. Lyra crouched down. The hem of her green wool kissed the dirt, and she didn't seem to notice or care, which told Mara everything about how this was going to go. When a Vance didn't care about her hem, a Vance was about to make someone bleed. You are not, Lyra said quietly, going to be anywhere near that courtyard today. I wasn't planning to be. You're not going to be in the hall when he eats. I know. You're not going to be in the corridors when he walks. You're not going to be at the fire when he speaks. If I so much as smell you on a curtain he brushes past, Mara, I swear on my father's throat, I will have you whipped in front of the kitchen staff. Do you understand me? Yes. Yes, what? Mara swallowed. The lie burned. The wrist burned worse. Yes, Lyra. Lyra held her eyes a second longer than she needed to. Then she stood up, brushed nothing off her wool, and turned to leave. She got 3 steps before she stopped. And Mara, yeah. Take that thing off your wrist before he sees you, even from a distance. I don't want him asking why a wolfless rat is wearing relic jewelry in my pack. She walked away before Mara could answer. The two girls behind her stared for another second. One of them, the taller one, gave Mara a little smile that wasn't a smile at all. It was a promise. And then they were gone too, and it was just Mara and the hide and the brush and the sun climbing up the wrong side of the sky. My pack. Mara pressed her forehead against the cold, wet leather and didn't cry. She was very good at not crying. She had been practicing for 16 years. The bracelet on her wrist pulsed once, soft, like something waking up under the skin. She froze. It had never done that before. In all the years she'd worn it, the cord fraying, the little flat disc of dark metal at the center going dull, and then bright, and then dull again with seasons she didn't understand. It had never moved. It had been a dead thing. Her mother's dead thing, handed to her the night before her mother died, pressed into her palm with fingers already gone cold at the tips. Keep it on, her mother had said. Keep it on, and don't let them see. Not the alpha, not the beta, not anyone who would know what it is. Promise me, Mara. Mara had promised. She had been 8 years old. She didn't know what it was. She still didn't know what it was. She only knew that in 16 winters, through fevers and beatings, and the one time she'd fallen through the ice on Cold Run Creek and nearly drowned, the leather cord had never broken and the disc had never come off, as if the thing wore her and not the other way around. Pulse. It happened again. Small. A whisper of heat. Mara tugged her sleeve down over it and stood up so fast her knees cracked. The hide flopped back into the mud. She didn't care. She needed to get inside, get under a roof, get the wrist under 3 layers of wool before somebody, before anyone, Mara. It was old Hesh this time. Just Hesh. He was leaning on the kitchen door with his bad leg out in front of him and his pipe between his teeth, and he was looking at her the way he sometimes did when he thought nobody else was watching, which was the only way a man like Hesh ever looked at her, carefully and not for very long. Get that hide off the ground, girl. Yes, sir. And wash your hands. You're bleeding on your own boots. Yes, sir. He didn't move out of her way. He waited until she'd picked the hide up and draped it on the rack and scrubbed her hands in the cold barrel by the door. Then, when she tried to slip past him into the warm dark of the kitchen, he put his pipe hand against the doorframe and stopped her with just that. Mara. Hesh, I have to... Today's going to be a bad day. She looked up at him. Hesh was not a man who said unnecessary things. He was 80 years old if he was a day, and he had been a tracker under 2 alphas before this one, and he had buried 3 wives and 6 children, and he said maybe 100 words in any given week, so when he used one, you paid attention. I know, she said. No, you don't. He took the pipe out of his mouth. You don't know yet, but you will. Stay out of the courtyard. Stay out of the hall. If somebody calls you to serve, you tell them I need you in the curing shed. You hear me? Hesh, you hear me, girl? I hear you. He nodded once and moved his arm. She went past him into the dark and the smell of cooking fat, and he did not follow her, and behind her she heard him let out a breath like a man setting down something heavy. The longhouse kitchens ran the length of the eastern wing, and on a normal day it was the warmest, loudest, safest room in the entire compound. Pans banging, women shouting, boys darting underfoot with baskets of onions and mushrooms, and cold hairs dragged in from the snares. Today, it was quiet. Not silent. The fires were still burning and the spits were still turning, and Bella, the head cook, was still yelling at somebody in the back about the state of the cream, but it was the quiet of a forest before a storm. Everybody moved fast and nobody laughed. And when they looked at each other, they looked through each other, because today was not about them. Today was about the visitor. Mara kept her head down and threaded her way to the back corner where the root cellar stairs came up. There was a low stool there, wedged between the stairs and the stone wall, where she sometimes ate her meals when nobody wanted to look at her. She sat down on it and pulled her sleeve up. The disc was glowing. Not brightly, not obviously. It was a thread of pale gold, cool instead of hot, running in a thin vein around the edge of the metal and then disappearing back into the dark. If she tilted her arm away from the candlelight, she could see it better. A slow, steady pulse, In, out, in, out, like a heartbeat that wasn't hers. "Oh no," she whispered. "No, no, 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 Mara." She yanked her sleeve down. Bella was standing over her with her hands on her hips and a tea towel over her shoulder and a look on her face like she'd found a rat in the flour. "What are you doing sitting down?" "I didn't say sit down. Hesh told me to help in the curing. Hesh can rot. Get up. Mistress Pell wants you in the hall." Mara's stomach dropped. "The hall." "You heard me." "Bella, please. Lyra said I wasn't supposed to." "Do I look like Lyra?" Bella grabbed her by the upper arm and hauled her up off the stool. "Mistress Pell is 3 girls short because Toma's sick, and Nessa sprained her wrist, and Grietta is crying in the pantry for reasons the spirits only know. So you are going to go put on a clean apron, and you are going to carry water jugs from the kitchen to the hall and back until Mistress Pell says you're done. Do you understand me?" "Bella, do you understand me?" "Yes." "Good. Aprons are on the hook. Go." Bella released her and turned away. Mara stood there for a second with her arm burning where Bella had gripped her, and she looked down at her wrist, and she thought, "I can't go into the hall. I can't be anywhere near him. Whatever is happening to this thing, whatever my mother didn't tell me, I can't." And underneath that, quieter and older and meaner, a second thought. So don't. Run. Run into the woods. Run to Cold Run Creek and keep running, and don't come back. She'd had that thought 1,000 times. 1,000,000. She had never once followed it. She didn't follow it now either. She took an apron off the hook and tied it, and pulled her sleeves down as far as they would go, and went to find Mistress Pell. The Blackstone Great Hall was big enough to seat 400 wolves at trestle tables, and today every inch of it was being scrubbed, hung, polished, or set on fire. Women on ladders were stringing pine boughs along the roof beams. Men were wrestling the long oak tables into the U-shape reserved for royal visits. 2 young warriors were pushing sawdust across the flagstones with wide brooms and arguing about whether the dais needed more candles or fewer. And in the middle of all of it, like a small dark planet with her own weather, stood Mistress Pell. Mistress Pell ran the house staff the way a good captain runs a ship, which is to say she ran it without raising her voice, and with a constant low-grade terror radiating off her in every direction. She was small and gray and narrow-shouldered, and her tongue could peel bark. She saw Mara come in and jerked her chin at the water station. "Girl, jugs. Every pitcher on that table needs to be full, and on the dais before the outriders clear the gate. Go." "Yes, mistress." "And Mara?" "Yes. If I see you near the king's chair, I will put you in the cellar for a week. Water, table, kitchen. Water, table, kitchen. That's your whole world today, you understand?" "Yes, mistress." "Move." Mara moved. The water came from the deep well behind the kitchens, and the pitchers were clay and heavy, and there were 12 of them. She did the first 4 without stopping, just head down, jug up, walk, pour, walk back. And she was on her 5th when the horn sounded. 3 long notes, then 2 short, then 3 long again. Outriders. At the gate. The hall exploded into motion. Mistress Pell started shouting for real. Somebody dropped a tray of goblets, and Mistress Pell didn't even turn her head. She just said, "That's coming out of your wages," in a voice that cut through the clatter like a knife through lard. Mara pressed herself against the wall with her 5th pitcher clutched against her chest and tried to become invisible. It had always worked before. It was her one skill. Be small, be quiet, be the wrong shape in the corner of somebody's eye. The wrist burned. Not a pulse anymore. A burn. A slow, steady, climbing heat, like a kettle coming up to boil under the skin, and she looked down, and the glow was no longer a thread. It was the whole edge of the disc, pale gold, bright enough that she could see it through the linen of her sleeve. She pressed her wrist against her stomach. She pressed harder. She tried to think cold thoughts. Ice on Cold Run Creek. The morning her mother died. The look on Lyra's face when she'd said my pack. The heat only got worse. The doors at the end of the hall opened. He came in alone. That was the first thing. Everyone had expected a procession. Kyle Draven was the alpha king of the Northern Territories, the sworn blood of 6 packs, the man who'd broken the Ironjaw Rebellion at 23 and taken the crown off his own uncle's dead neck at 25, and there were songs about him in every hall between here and the sea. You expected men like that to travel with banners and guards and the sound of drums. He came in alone. He came in alone, and he was not, Mara thought through the pounding in her wrist, what she had pictured. She had pictured someone older. Everyone talked about Cale Draven like he was a man made of iron and old war, and the stories gave her the impression of a graying, hard-faced king with scars and a short temper. The man who walked into the Blackstone Great Hall was maybe 30. He was tall. That part was right. He was very tall, taller than any wolf in the hall. And when the two lines of Blackstone warriors along the wall went to one knee, they didn't look up at him. They looked at his boots, but his hair was black and loose to his shoulders, and he wore no crown. He wore a long dark coat, road dusty at the hem, and a sword in a plain leather sheath, and the only thing about him that said king was the way the whole room got quieter around him. Sound sort of folded in his direction, like water bending around a stone. Behind him, 3 paces back, came a second man, older, big shoulders, a beard like an axe cut. That one had to be Ronvero, the king's second. Every wolf knew the name, even Mara, even scrubbing hides in a back courtyard. Ronvero had killed 14 men at the Battle of Threshold Ford and lost an eye doing it, and you could see the eye now, a bad milk-gray thing that didn't track. And when he walked into the hall, he looked at the room the way a butcher looks at a hanging pig. Measuring, pricing. Alpha Corin Blackstone met them at the center of the floor. He was a big man, Mara's alpha, barrel-chested, thick-bearded, red-faced from the cold outside. And he bowed deeper than Mara had ever seen him bow to anything. Beside him, Beta Harn Vance and his daughter Lyra came forward on cue. Lyra was exquisite. Her hair caught the torchlight and threw it back. Her smile was the smile she had practiced for months. Cale Draven didn't look at her. He didn't look at the alpha either. He had stopped, 3 paces inside the doorway. His head had turned. Just a little, like a man hearing a sound nobody else could hear. And Mara, pressed against the wall with a clay pitcher and a burning wrist and her heart trying to climb out of her throat, realized with a cold, sudden clarity that he was looking at her. Across 60 feet of polished stone and 100 held breaths. Straight at her. Their eyes met for maybe 1 second, maybe less. His face didn't move. He didn't frown. He didn't smile. Something happened behind his eyes that Mara would spend a long time afterward trying to name. Surprise. But not the kind of surprise that makes you flinch. Recognition, but not of a face, of a thing, the way you'd recognize a voice calling your name from the next room of a house you'd never been in. Then Corin Blackstone said, "Your Majesty, be welcome in Blackstone." And Cale turned his head away from her, and the moment closed. But the wrist did not stop burning. Mara set the pitcher down on the edge of the nearest trestle table because she no longer trusted her fingers to hold it. The clay clinked against the wood. Somebody hissed at her. "Be still, girl, be still." And she pressed her back flat against the wall and tried to breathe through her nose. Lyra had seen it. Across the hall, Lyra Vance had seen it. Not the glow. The glow was still hidden under Mara's sleeve. But the look, the 1-second look. Lyra had been standing beside her father with her hand resting on his arm like the Luna in waiting she knew herself to be, and she had been watching Kael's face for the moment he noticed her, and what she had seen instead was the King of the North turn his head to look at a scullery girl in a gravy-stained apron against the back wall. Lyra's smile did not falter. Lyra's smile was too well trained to falter, but her eyes moved to Mara and stayed there. And in them was something Mara had never seen before in Lyra, not in 16 years of small and medium and large cruelties. Fear. And where there was fear, there was always, always going to be blood. The welcome feast took 3 hours. Mara did not serve the king's table. Mistress Pell, whatever her other flaws, was not a fool, and she had caught the moment too, and she rearranged the water rotation without a word and sent Mara to the kitchen side. So Mara stood in the back passage between the kitchens and the hall with a tray and refilled pitchers and stared at the knots in the wooden floor and listened to the roar of the feast on the other side of the door and tried to make her wrist stop. It would not stop. It had not stopped since he'd walked in. The burn had settled into a slow, steady thrum. Not painful anymore, just present. The way a second pulse is present once you've noticed it. And once you've noticed it, you can't stop noticing it. She kept her sleeve down. She kept her arm crossed against her body. Every time the door opened and somebody came through with an empty pitcher or a full tray, she braced for it to be Lyra, or worse, and Lyra didn't come. Lyra was in the hall. Lyra was being a good Beta's daughter. Lyra was, Mara thought, being patient. Hesh came through once, carrying nothing, which was itself strange. He stopped in front of her. "You all right, girl?" "Yes." "No, you're not." Mara swallowed. "He looked at me," she said. Hesh's pipe moved from one side of his mouth to the other. "Yeah." "You saw." "Whole room saw, Mara. Whole rooms pretending they didn't." "Hesh, what is—" She glanced down at her arm, then back up at him, and didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Hesh's eyes went to her wrist and stayed there a long second, and his face, which never gave anything away, gave away exactly one thing. He was afraid. Not for her. Of her. No. That wasn't right either. Of what was on her. "Hesh, keep your sleeve down," he said. "Don't talk to him. Don't stand where he can see you. If you can get out of this house tonight, do it. Go to the widow's rest above the creek. Tell her Hesh sent you. She'll keep you until I come." "Until you—" "What is happening?" "I said keep your sleeve down." And he was gone. It was after the third course, when the roast boar was down to bones, and the mead had started doing its work, and the hall was loud the way halls get loud when 100 warriors decide they like each other, that Lyra made her move. Mara had been sent in for the bread. Just the bread. A basket of hot bread from the ovens, covered with a cloth, carried down the long side of the hall and set on the servants' table at the lower end. Head down, eyes on the flagstones, in and out. That was all she had to do. She almost made it. She was 6 steps from the servants' table when Lyra Vance's voice rang out from the high end of the hall, clear as a struck bell, pitched to carry. "You there, girl, stop!" Mara stopped. Every conversation in the hall did not stop, because it was a feast and people were drunk, but the conversations closest to the dais did. A little ripple of silence widening out from the king's chair, and Mara felt that silence touch her spine and crawl up it one vertebra at a time. She did not turn around. "Turn around, girl. When a daughter of the Vance line calls you, you turn around." Mara turned around. Lyra was standing. She had a cup in one hand and she was not swaying as Lyra never swayed. Lyra could drink any 2 warriors in this hall under the table and walk home in a straight line. And her smile was the pretty smile, the public smile, the smile she wore for courtships and festivals. "Come here," Lyra said. "Come to the dais. Don't be shy." Mara's feet did not move. "Come here." They moved. She did not remember telling them to. She walked down the length of the hall with her breadbasket clutched in both hands and her eyes on Lyra's green boots, and the silence rippled out ahead of her and closed behind her. And by the time she reached the foot of the dais, the entire hall had gone quiet. Mara stood at the bottom of the 3 stone steps and did not look up. "Your Majesty," Lyra said, and now her voice was not pitched for Mara, it was pitched for the king, and it had the warm, lilting music of a young Beta's daughter telling a charming story. "Forgive me. I saw you notice this one when you came in, and I thought, you deserve an explanation, and my alpha is too kind to give you one." "Lyra," that was Corin Blackstone, from somewhere to Mara's left. Quiet. A warning. Lyra ignored him. She was not going to stop now. Mara could feel it the way you could feel a storm front coming down off the ridge, the pressure changing, the air getting thin. "This is Mara Vale," Lyra said. "She's an orphan. We've kept her on out of respect for her mother, who served this house. She's Wolfless, Your Majesty. 16 winters, and she's never once shifted, never once felt the moon. She has no rank, no contribution, no blood that matters. We use her in the kitchens. I tell you this only so that you are not troubled by the thought that the Blackstone pack parades a creature like her in your presence by choice. She is simply part of the furniture. I apologize if she distracted you." Mara's hands were shaking on the basket. She could feel the heat of the bread through the cloth. She could feel the heat of her own wrist, stronger now, climbing. She could not see the king's face. She did not dare raise her eyes. "Apologize," Lyra said, softer now, to Mara. "Apologize to His Majesty for making him look at you." The hall did not breathe. Mara opened her mouth. 16 years. 16 years of opening her mouth and saying what they wanted her to say. 16 years of yes, Lyra. Sorry, Lyra. Forgive me, Lyra. I'm nothing, Lyra. It was built into her tongue. It was in the grooves of her teeth. She opened her mouth and the apology was already there, already halfway out of her throat. And she didn't say it. She didn't say anything. She just stood there with her head down and her basket in her hands, and she did not speak, and the silence got bigger and bigger and bigger. "Mara," Lyra said, a little edge in it now, a little something fraying. "I told you to apologize." Nothing. Lyra's hand moved. Mara saw the boots take a step down off the dais. 1 step, 2. Lyra was coming down to her, and Mara knew what came next. She had been hit in public before. It was not new. It was not even rare. And her shoulders went up automatically to protect her face the way a dog's do, and her eyes squeezed shut. A chair scraped. Not loud. Just one chair pushed back across stone. At the center of the high table, Mara opened her eyes. Cale Draven was standing up. He was not looking at Mara. He was looking at Lyra, and his face had not changed at all since he'd walked into the hall 3 hours before. Still that same quiet, still that same nothing. And somehow that was worse than a snarl would have been. Lyra froze on the second step. Her hand, which had been rising, came back down to her side. "Your Majesty," Lyra said. Her voice was still smooth, just, "I was only—" "Sit down, Lyra Vance." He had not raised his voice. He did not need to. His voice had a thing in it that Mara had never heard in a voice before. No rage, no heat, just a weight, like a hand being set very gently on top of your head and then not moving. Lyra sat down. Not in her seat, on the step. She sort of folded onto the second stone step of the dais in her green wool and her silver, and she stayed there, and her mouth opened and closed once and did not produce a sound. Cale Draven walked the length of the high table. He came down the steps, past Lyra, without looking at her. He stopped in front of Mara. Up close, he was bigger than he'd looked from across the room. Up close, he smelled like cold road and pine resin, and something underneath that. Something Mara felt in her teeth before she felt it anywhere else. A low animal hum, like standing near a banked fire. She did not look up. She could not make herself look up. Her wrist was a coal. "Your name," he said. Quiet. "Mara." "Mara what?" "Mara Vale, Your Majesty." "Look at me, Mara Vale." She looked up. His eyes were gray. Not a pretty gray. A wolf gray. The color of weather before a hard snow, the color of the sky over Cold Run Creek in January, and they went through her the way a lamp goes through fog. He was not looking at her face. He was looking at something behind her face. Something older. "Your wrist," he said. "Your Majesty." "Show me your wrist, Mara." Behind him, up at this high table, Mara could see Rowan Varro had stood up too. Very slowly. The second's one good eye was fixed on her arm, and his hand was resting on the pommel of a short knife at his belt, and his face had gone the color of old paper. "Your Majesty, please." That was Alpha Corin, finally finding his voice. "She is a kitchen girl." Lyra spoke out of turn. "I'll have her corrected. There's no need." "Corin." "Your Majesty." "Quiet." Corin went quiet. Cale Draven held out his hand, palm up, between himself and Mara. He did not touch her. He just held his hand there, in the space between them, and waited. Mara's whole body was trembling now. Her eyes flicked, just once, across the hall. Across the long rows of warriors and elders and servants, across Hesh standing in the kitchen doorway with his pipe forgotten in his hand, across Mistress Pell gone white as a shroud, across Lyra crumpled on the step with her smile finally gone. And she saw what every single one of them was about to see, and she knew with a terrible, calm certainty that there was no going back from it. The breadbasket slipped out of her fingers. It hit the stone. A loaf rolled out and stopped against the toe of Cale Draven's boot. Nobody moved to pick it up. Mara lifted her right arm. She pushed her sleeve up, slow, past the scars on her forearm, past the old burn from the kitchen fire when she was 10, past the bracelet of pale skin where the leather cord had sat for 16 winters. She turned her wrist over so the inside faced up. The disc was no longer dark metal. The disc was gold. Living gold. A gold that moved, that breathed, that pulsed in time with something she could feel all the way down in the bones of her feet. And the glow had spread off the metal now. Thin, hair-fine lines of light crawling out from under the disc, climbing up her forearm in a pattern she had never seen and somehow, terribly, already knew. Curling lines, looping lines, a shape like antlers or roots, or the memory of both, written in light just beneath her skin. Somebody in the hall made a noise, a small, choked noise. An older woman. It might have been Mistress Pell. It might have been her own voice. Mara could not tell anymore. Her ears were roaring. Cale Draven looked at her wrist for a long, long second. Then he looked at her face, and then, slow and careful, and in front of the entire Blackstone pack, in front of Alpha Corin and Beta Harn and Lyra Vance on the stone step with her mouth hanging open, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories went to one knee, on the flagstones, in the dust and the fallen bread. One knee, right hand flat against his own chest, head bowed maybe 3 inches. "Your Majesty," Corin's voice cracked. "Your Majesty, what are you—" "Be quiet, Corin." Kael did not look up. He kept his eyes on the stone between Mara's feet. When he spoke again, his voice was not pitched for the hall. It was pitched only for her. "Do you know what that is, Mara Vale?" "No," she whispered. "Has anyone ever told you?" "My mother said—" She said, "Don't let anyone see it." "Your mother was a wise woman." He looked up then. He looked up at her from one knee, and he was not a king anymore, not the way kings were in stories. He was just a man with gray eyes and a dusty coat, and a face Mara was going to see every time she closed her eyes for the rest of her life. "Listen to me very carefully," he said. "In a moment I am going to stand up. When I stand up, you are going to walk with me out of this hall. You are not going to look at Lyra Vance. You are not going to look at your Alpha. You are not going to speak. Do you understand?" Do you understand, Mara?" "Yes." "Good." He stood up. The hall stayed on its feet with him, because the hall did not know what else to do. 400 wolves, and not a single one of them moved. Not to breathe, it seemed. Cale Draven turned, and his shoulder came up level with Mara's shoulder, and he did not offer her his arm. He did not have to. A king did not lead a kitchen girl out of a hall by the arm, but he set his pace to hers, and when she took her first shaking step toward the doors, he took his with her, exactly, foot for foot, as if they had been walking together their whole lives. They got 3 paces. "No." Lyra Vance had found her voice. She was on her feet again, and she had come down off the dais, and her face was no longer beautiful. It was streaked, red, collapsing around the edges, the face of a child who had been promised a thing her whole life and was watching it turn into smoke in front of her. Her hand was stretched out toward Mara. Her hair had come loose from its double plait on one side. "No," she said again. "No, that's not, Your Majesty, that thing on her arm. I don't—" "She stole it. She must have stolen it. She's a servant. She can't—" Lyra, her father, Beta Harn, finally moving, finally realizing, his hand on her elbow. "Lyra, sit down. Sit down, girl." "She's nothing," Lyra shouted. "I have served this pack my whole life. I have given everything. I was promised. She is wolfless. She is nothing. She cannot—" Cale Draven stopped walking. He did not turn his whole body. He turned his head. Just his head. And he looked at Lyra Vance over his shoulder with his wolf-gray eyes, and whatever Lyra had been about to say died in her throat with a little wet click. "Lyra Vance," he said, "Your Majesty, you called her a stain on Blackstone blood this morning, in the courtyard, in the mud. Didn't you?" Lyra's face went white. The hall made a sound, a low collective sound like wind in a chimney. "How?" Lyra whispered. "How did you—" "Your Beta's daughter spits on a wolf she does not recognize," Cale Draven said. And his voice was not quiet anymore. It was traveling now. It was reaching the rafters. "And calls her kind unworthy in my presence, in her presence. Do you know what she is, Lyra Vance? Do you know what you put your boot on this morning?" Lyra did not answer. Lyra could not answer. "Neither did I," Kael said, "until I walked through that door." He turned back to Mara. His face softened, just a little, just at the corners of the mouth, and it was not a smile, but it was the place a smile would come from, later, when there was time. "Walk," he said gently. Mara walked. They went the length of the hall together, the king of the north and the wolfless orphan of the Blackstone kitchens, and behind them the pack stayed on its feet and did not speak. And when they reached the great carved doors, Rowan Varro was already there, and he pulled them open for her, not for Kyle. And as she passed him, the second of the Northern Territories lowered his scarred head half an inch and did not lift it again until she was through. The cold hit her face. The courtyard was empty. The sky over the pines had gone to the color of old pewter. Somewhere down in the woods, a raven was calling once, twice, 3 times. Mara stopped on the top step with her wrists still glowing gold beneath her sleeve, and her breath coming out in a white plume and every bone in her body shaking, and she did the thing she had promised herself she would not do. She started crying, not loud, not the way other girls cried, just 2 tears, hot, down the same side of her face, one after the other, and her shoulders hitched once under the apron. And that was all. Cale Draven beside her did not look at her while she did it. He looked out at the pines. He gave her the pines and the raven and the gray sky and the privacy of not being seen, and after a moment he said very quietly, in a voice that belonged only to the space between the two of them, "Your mother's name was Isa." Mara's head came up. "How do you—" "Later," he said, and then softer still. "You're safe now, Mara Vale. For the first time in 16 years, you're safe." She didn't believe him. Not yet. She had been lied to by everyone in her life who had ever used a soft voice, and she knew, even standing here, with the disc burning against her pulse, with the king of the north beside her on the cold stone, that safe was not a word that applied to her. Not really. Not with Lyra Vance still alive in that hall behind them. Not with whatever was under her skin, now wide awake, now paying attention, now listening. But she let herself for one breath pretend it was true. One breath. Behind her in the Blackstone Great Hall, she could hear Lyra Vance begin, at last, to scream. Lyra Vance's scream did not last long. Betaharn clamped a hand over his daughter's mouth before the third note could carry, and he dragged her off the stone step by the back of her collar, the way a man drags a dog out of a butcher's shop. Mara heard it happen behind her without turning around. She heard the green wool sliding on flagstone. She heard Lyra's heel catch on something, the edge of the dais maybe, or the fallen bread, and the sharp, ugly yelp of a young woman whose entire future had just been pulled out from under her in front of 400 witnesses. Cale Draven did not turn around either. "Walk," he said, for the second time, and Mara walked. The cold on the courtyard steps had its teeth in her now. Her apron was thin and her sleeves were thinner, and the sweat of the hall was freezing against the back of her neck in small, mean patches. She did not stop. She did not have the permission to stop. The king of the north had told her to walk, and something in the way he had said it, the same way he had said quiet to Alpha Corin, made her legs keep moving even when her knees had forgotten how to hold her up. Rowan Varro fell in behind them at 4 paces. She could hear the scrape of his good boot and the slight drag of the bad one and the sound of his hand resting, not gripping, on the pommel of his knife. He was not, Mara realized, walking behind the king. He was walking behind her. They crossed the courtyard in silence. The snow of 3 nights ago was still packed gray between the stones, and their breath went up in slow, pale columns, and the Blackstone banner on the high pole over the gate snapped once in a wind Mara could not feel down here at ground level. Past the well. Past the smoke of the forge. Past the long, low shed where Hesh cured his hides. She realized, with a dull flash of something that was not quite grief, that she might never go back inside that shed. She had lived half her life in that shed. It had been the only place in the whole compound where nobody came looking for her. "Keep your sleeve down," Kyle said, very quiet, "until we're inside." "Yes, Your Majesty." "Don't call me that." "Yes, but Wolfless?" "Not out here." She didn't know what to call him instead, so she didn't call him anything. She pulled her sleeve down over the wrist until the cuff nearly swallowed her fingers, and under the linen the disc was still warm, still pulsing, still awake. It was not burning the way it had in the hall. It was doing something slower now, something that made her feel, for the first time in her life, as if there was a second set of lungs inside her chest, smaller, older, more careful than her own, and that set of lungs had just taken its first breath of the open air. The king had been given the East Guest Hall. Nobody called it that. The Blackstone elders called it the Stone House because it was the one building in the compound that wasn't half timber and thatch. It was a squat gray block of quarried granite with a slate roof, older than the rest of the pack houses, built in a time when alphas had expected other alphas to try to kill them in their sleep. The windows were narrow, the door was iron-banded. Two of the king's riders stood on either side of it, and when they saw Kyle coming, they did not salute him. They looked at Mara instead. They looked at her for a long second with their faces carefully blank, and then they stepped aside, and the one on the left pulled the heavy door open without a word. Inside it was dark and warm, and it smelled like cedar smoke and old leather. A fire was already going in the hearth at the far end. A long table ran down the center of the room, and someone, probably Mistress Pell at some point in the last half hour, in a panic, had laid it with bread and cold meat and a pitcher of dark red wine. None of it had been touched. There were 3 chairs. One of them had a cloak thrown across the back of it, the same dark road cloak the king had worn into the hall. Kyle closed the door behind them himself. The sound of the latch falling into place was the loudest thing Mara had heard all day. Then he turned around and looked at her, and for the first time, with nobody watching, he let his face move. It was not a big movement. It was a tiredness. The set of his shoulders went down half an inch. The line of his jaw softened. He pulled a glove off his right hand with his teeth and dropped it onto the table, and he leaned both palms flat on the wood and closed his eyes for maybe 2 breaths. "Sit down, Mara." She did not sit down. "Mara, I don't—" She swallowed. Her throat was full of sand. "I don't know what's happening." "I know you don't. My mother—" "In a minute. Sit down first, please. Please." A king had said please to her. She sat down. He took the chair opposite, not the one at the head of the table. He took the one across from her, which meant he had to swing a long leg over the bench, which made him look for 1 second like a man and not an idea. Rowan Varro did not sit. Rowan Varro walked the length of the room and took up a post by the fire, hands loose at his sides, his bad eye pointing at the door and his good one pointing at her wrist. Kyle poured her a cup of wine and pushed it across to her. She didn't touch it. "It isn't poisoned," he said. I know. I've never had wine." Something almost moved at the corner of his mouth. "All right, water then." "I'm all right." "You're shaking." "I'm always shaking. She caught herself. "I'm cold. It's the courtyard." He looked at her across the table for a long, level second, and she realized that he wasn't going to push her. He was going to let her have the lie about being cold. He was going to let her have the lie the same way he had given her the pines on the top step. It was a thing he was doing on purpose. She did not know what to do with a man who did things for her on purpose. "Mara," he said, "show me your wrist again." "In here?" "In here." She pushed her sleeve up. The disc had gone quiet. The hair-fine lines of gold had faded back to pale ghosts of themselves, barely visible now in the firelight, like scars you could only see if you were looking for them. The metal of the disc was dark again. It might have been a trick of a bad candle, except for the fact that where Kyle had bent his head to look at it, she could see his eyes narrow slightly, and somewhere behind those eyes, a decision was being made about her that she would not get a vote on. "Do you know how long you've worn this?" he asked. "Since I was 8. My mother gave it to me the night before she died." "Do you remember her face?" "Yes." "Do you remember her voice?" "Yes." "Did she tell you where it came from?" "No." "Did she tell you what it was?" She said. Mara's voice scraped. She had never said these words out loud to another person. Not one once. She had not known until this exact moment how heavy they had been inside her chest. She said it was a promise her mother made. She said as long as I wore it, I would not be... She said I would not be hunted. Kale looked up from her wrist. "Hunted," he said. "Yes." Those were her exact words. "Yes." He sat back slowly. He did not look at Roan. Roan did not look at him. But something passed between them anyway. The tiny, particular silence of 2 men who had just had the same thought and were not going to say it out loud in front of the third person in the room. "Drink the water," Kyle said. "Actually eat something. When did you eat last?" "Yesterday." "What did you eat?" Bread? How much? A, a heel. A piece of the end. He did not sigh. He did not make any face at all. He reached across the table, tore a piece off the brown loaf that sat between them, put it on a wooden plate, added a slab of cold mutton and a round of hard pale cheese, and slid the plate across to her. Eat that, slowly, all of it. I'm going to talk while you eat, and I'm going to say some things that are going to be hard to hear, and I need you to be eating while you hear them, because the last thing either of us needs tonight is for you to faint. Do you understand me? Yes. Eat. She ate. The mutton was cold and salty and better than anything she had put in her mouth in years, and she made herself chew slowly because he had told her to, and because he was watching her, and because she did not want to be the kind of person who wolfed down a stranger's mutton. Even a king's mutton, especially a king's mutton. Kyle waited until she had swallowed twice. Then he said, "You are not wolfless, Mara." She stopped chewing. "You have been told you are wolfless your entire life. Your alpha believes you are wolfless. Your beta believes you are wolfless. That girl on the dais believes you are wolfless, and that is why she believes she could put her boot on your neck in a courtyard at dawn and keep her teeth in her jaw. They're all wrong. Your wolf is not absent. Your wolf is sealed." Do you understand the difference? No. A wolfless pup is a tragedy of blood. Two wolves lie together and something goes wrong in the womb, and a child is born who will never shift. It happens. It is rare. It is sad, and it is nobody's fault. A sealed pup is something else entirely. A sealed pup is a child whose wolf has been deliberately locked away from her, so that she cannot feel it, and it cannot feel her, and so that no other wolf, not a beta, not an alpha, not a rogue on the road, can smell what she is. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Somebody did this to me. Yes. My mother did this to me. The king was quiet for a moment. Then he said carefully, "Your mother carried you to the person who did it. That is not the same thing." Mara put the bread down on the plate. Her hand was not steady. "Why?" "Because she loved you." That's not an answer. I am aware." Why did she? And then her voice went away from her because the answer was already standing in the back of her mind, and it had been standing there for hours now, since the second she'd seen Hesh's face when he'd looked at her wrist. It had been standing there since Kyle Draven had said, on a step over a gray courtyard, "Your mother's name was Isa." It had been standing there, if she was being honest with herself, since she was 8 years old and her mother's fingers had pressed the cord into her palm in a dark room that smelled of fever. "Because somebody would have killed me," she whispered. "Yes." "Who?" Kyle did not answer right away. He was choosing his words. She could see him doing it, and the fact that a king had to choose his words with her was itself a thing she could not take in. "There was a line of wolves," he said, "once, a long time before any of us were born, who were—" He stopped, tried again. "There were wolves who came before alphas, who stood above alphas, before the packs settled into what they are now, before the kingdoms were drawn, before there were betas and omegas and the rest of the rank we live by. The old stories call them the primordial bloodlines, not because they were more beautiful or more noble, but because they were first, the oldest wolves. The ones from whom the rest of us are deluded. Most of the packs in the north have convinced themselves that these lines died out. They have convinced themselves because it is more comfortable than the alternative. The alternative being that they were hunted to the bone, that the oldest, most powerful wolves in our history were killed to their cradles by every alpha strong enough to fear them, that if a primordial pup were ever born again, if any living wolf were to pick up the scent of one, there would not be a crown in the north that would not send riders to put her in the ground before her 10th winter. Mara was very still. And that's what I am. I don't know yet. I think yes. I'm almost certain yes. But I've never seen one before either. I've only read of the seals. The seal is what you are wearing. It's one of maybe a dozen that were made, that we know of, by an order of wolf women who did not want to see the last of the old blood burned out of the world. They took the pups whose mothers came to them. They sealed the wolves inside those pups. They sent the pups away. They told their mothers, keep her small, keep her poor, keep her worthless in the eyes of every strong wolf who passes her, and when she is old enough and the seal is ready, It will open itself and she will know what she is. My mother knew all of this. Your mother was one of those women, Mara, or the daughter of one. I don't know which. It doesn't matter. She knew enough to take you to someone who could seal you, and she knew enough to die quietly when she died, so that no one would ask why she had a child nobody could smell. Mara felt the walls of the stone house very far away. The fire was still burning. Roan was still standing by it. The wine in the pitcher was still red. Her hand was still on the piece of bread. She died of fever, she said. Did she? Everybody said so. Do you believe everybody, Mara? No. Neither do I. Mara closed her eyes. When she opened them again, Kyle Draven was watching her with something in his face that was not pity. She was very grateful for that. She did not think she could have stood pity. It was closer to recognition, maybe. The recognition of a man who had grown up under a crown and knew what it cost to be the person a knife was waiting for. Who knew about me? She said. Not many people, not here. Your mother and whoever helped her. And if I had to guess, one of your elders. The old tracker. Hesh, is that his name? Yes. He was a tracker before he was anything else. A good one, an old one. When he looked at your wrist just now, he didn't look surprised. He looked like a man whose worst guess had just come true. He'll be useful to you. Keep him close. I can't just keep an old man. She stopped. Because she was not anymore. She wasn't the kitchen girl anymore. She had stopped being that at the moment she'd lifted her sleeve in front of 400 wolves, and she had known it even as she did it, and that, more than the seal, more than the king, more than anything, was the part she could not yet make her mind close around. What happens now, she said. Now? Cale picked up his own cup. He hadn't touched it either. He looked at the wine in it, and then he looked back at her. Now every wolf in that hall is going home to their fire and telling their wife or their brother or their sworn friend that they just watched the Alpha King of the Northern Territories kneel on the stone in the middle of a feast to a kitchen girl with a gold mark on her wrist. By morning, every pack in a 2-day ride will know. By the end of the week, every pack between here and the sea. I did not plan to do that, Mara. I did not come to Blackstone to do that. But I did it, and it is done. And now it cannot be undone, and you and I are going to have to live inside what I did. Why did you do it? He looked at her for a moment. Because when I walked into that hall, he said, something in the air moved, and I turned my head, and there you were. And I have been waiting my whole life to feel what I felt in that second, and I didn't know it until it was already on me. I will not pretend to you, Mara Vale, that I understand it. I will not lie to you and tell you it is a small thing. It is a very old thing, and we are going to have to be honest with each other about it, starting tonight, because I do not have the time to be kind. Jawas! Her face was hot. She stared down at the plate. What does it mean? It means my wolf knows your wolf, even through the seal. It means we are bonded in the old sense, the sense the new packs have mostly forgotten. It means that for the rest of your life, whenever you are in a room, I will know you are in it. And for the rest of my life, whenever you are hurt, I will feel it before you do. It means a great many things, Mara, none of which are going to be comfortable, but the most important thing it means tonight is this. He leaned forward. There is no one in this compound who can touch you now without going through me first. And there is no one on this continent who can go through me. She did not say anything. She couldn't. A log dropped in the hearth. Rowan Varro did not react. He had heard the whole speech, and he did not react to any of it, and it came to her watching him that he had probably heard a version of it in his head 100 times over the years without knowing what it would be about. And now that he had heard the real one, he was simply rearranging the rest of his life around it. She found her voice. My pack. What about it? Corinne, the Alpha. He has to say something. He can't just... Corin Blackstone, Cale said, is sitting in his hall right now with his hands on his knees and his mouth shut. He has figured out in the last 20 minutes that his beta's daughter has put his entire pack in a position it cannot climb out of. He is going to do exactly what I tell him to do for the rest of the week. And when I leave Blackstone, I am going to take you with me. Take me with you. Yes. I mean you cannot stay here. This is my... She stopped. She was going to say my home. She could not make the word come out. It wasn't true. It had never been true. The cold of the courtyard, the slap of Dina's hand, the smell of rot in the curing shed, none of that was home. She had been telling herself for 16 years that it was because she had had nothing else to tell herself. But now, right now, sitting across a cedar table from a man who had just put his knee on the stone for her, she could feel the lie finally coming apart in her chest, and it was terrifying. It was more terrifying than the seal. "Where would I go?" she said, small. "North with me, to Hollow Reach." "I can't. I've never been outside the Blackstone walls. I know. I can't just, I know. I don't know how to be." She gestured helplessly at her own wrist. "This. I don't know how to be this. I don't know how to stand up straight in front of people. I can't eat with people. I don't know which fork is. Mara." "What?" "I do not care which fork you pick up." "People will care. Then people will learn. I'm not asking you to be a Luna tonight. I'm asking you to be alive tomorrow, and you cannot be that inside these walls. Not now. Not after what happened in the hall." "What's going to happen in the hall? Tonight?" "Yes." He considered her for a second. "Lyra Vance is going to try to kill you," he said. She stared at him. She will not call it that in her head. She will tell herself that she is defending her father's honor, or the pack's honor, or the natural order of things. She will say it prettily to herself over and over, until it sounds noble. But the heart of it is that you walked out of that hall at my side, and she was the one left on the step, and a wolf like Lyra Vance cannot live inside that picture. Either the picture goes, or she does. So she will come. Tonight, or tomorrow night, or the night after. Probably tonight, because rage does not wait well. She wouldn't here, in the king's guest house? Not in this room. She isn't stupid. Then, she'll wait for you to leave it. Mara went cold. Kael saw it. He didn't soften his face. "You asked me what was going to happen," he said. "I am telling you. I would rather tell you the truth and have you angry with me than lie to you and have you dead by moonset. Am I wrong to do that?" "No." "Good." Roan spoke for the first time. He did not turn his head away from the door. "She'll bring Dara and Helm," he said. His voice was a low, flat thing, like gravel shifting. "That's her too. Maybe the tall one, Porta. Not more. She'll want it small. She'll want to tell her father afterward that it was just a fight got out of hand." "Roan, you've known Lyra Vance for 6 hours. I've known 600 Lyras, Majesty." Kael almost smiled. "Fair. And she'll go for the wrist first," Roan said. "She'll want the seal off. She's young enough to think that if she takes the seal, she takes the thing. She doesn't yet know that the thing is the girl." Mara swallowed. "What do I do?" she said. "Stay in this house," Kael said. "Sleep in the inner room. I will sleep in this one. Roan will sleep at the door. In the morning, when it's light, we will ride." I don't ride." "You'll learn. I don't have anything. I don't have clothes. You'll have everything you need in Hollow Reach. And before then. Tonight, we will get you what you can carry from where you sleep." She looked down at the table. "That's the problem," she said. "What is?" "Where I sleep is not in the longhouse. It's in the back. In the kitchen lean-to. There's a pallet. I have things. Nothing. I don't care about the things, but say it. My mother's things." "What things?" A box. A wooden box. She had it when I took it the night she died, and I hid it, and nobody knows I have it. It has her hair in it, a piece of her hair, and a thing, a token, a little stone she said her mother gave her. I don't want to. If I leave, I want to. You'll bring it. I'll send someone. Nobody else can touch it. Then I'll send you." Her voice caught. "You just said I shouldn't leave this house." "I did." So he looked at Roan. Roan looked back at him. Another of those silences that were not really silences, that were full of something that had been said between them 1,000 times. I'll take her, Roan said. To the kitchen lean-to, to the kitchen lean-to, and back, through the outer yard, not the hall. Through the outer yard. Now, before they finished screaming in there about what to do with her, Roan moved. He stepped away from the fire and picked up a second cloak from a peg on the wall, a heavy gray thing, thicker than the one he was already wearing, and he crossed the room and held it out to Mara without looking at her. Up, he said. Put this on. Hood up. Walk on my left. Don't speak to anyone. If somebody speaks to you, they're speaking to me. Are we clear? Yes? Yes what, girl? Yes? Yes, Roan. I'm not a majesty. Don't call me one. Yes, Roan. Good girl. It was not from Roan Vero a kindness. It was an inspection that had come back clean. She stood up and let him put the heavy cloak around her shoulders. And it was so much warmer than anything she had ever worn in her life that she almost made a sound. She did not make the sound. She pulled the hood up, and she pulled her sleeves down, and she looked at Cale Draven across the table. If I'm not back, she began. You'll be back. But if, Mara, you will be back. Roan has not lost someone he was walking yet. He is not about to start tonight. Go. She went. The outer yard of the Blackstone compound was a different country at dusk. The cook fires had been damped because the hall had the feast, and the lesser buildings were lit only by the single-pitch torches in iron brackets at their corners. Between the torches, the yard was pure blue dark, and the snow gave back only what little light came down off the pewter sky. Roan walked on her right. He did not offer her an arm, and she did not ask for one. They passed the forge, silent now, and the smoke shed, silent now, and the long, low kitchen row with its one lit window where someone was still banging pans. Bella, probably, yelling at the dark about something. And they took the narrow path between the kitchens and the fencing that led around to the lean-to. Mara's lean-to had 3 walls and a leaning roof and a curtain of oiled canvas where a door should have been. It backed onto the rear wall of the pack, against the log stockade, and in the summer it smelled like the pigs in the next enclosure, and in the winter it smelled like nothing at all because everything in it was frozen. It was not a room. It was a gap between buildings. The pallet was against the inner wall, and under it was a loose board in the floor, and under the board was a hollow in the frozen ground where Mara, over 8 years, had dug out a space for a single cedar box the size of her 2 hands. She stopped at the canvas. Wait, she whispered. What? Light. There's a candle. I need to... No candle. My eyes are better than yours. Show me where. The pallet. Lift it. There's a loose board. The board lifts up. Roan bent. His bad leg made a sound when he bent that she did not like. He set his hand on the edge of the pallet and lifted it clear of the floor. Not moved, lifted, one-handed, as if it were a book, and not a straw-stuffed sack. And she knelt down and felt along the boards in the dark until her fingers found the one with the split knot at the corner. She pried it up. Her fingers were shaking so badly she dropped it once. She picked it up. She reached into the hollow. The box was there. It was there, and it was colder than the ground around it, and the smell of old cedar hit her face the way the smell of a mother's hair hits a grown child when they find the dress in the attic, and for 1 second Mara almost broke. She did not break. She lifted the box out. She put the board back. Roan set the pallet down. Go, he said. One more. One more what? There's under the pillow, there's a knife. A knife. A small one. Her face heated. In case someone came in. Roan Varo looked at her in the dark. She could not see his face under his hood, but she could feel the look. All right, he said, get the knife. She got the knife. It was not a good knife. It was a kitchen knife with a bone handle and a bad nick in the blade, and she had stolen it from the scrap pile 3 winters ago, and she had never once used it on anything but frozen rope. She tucked it inside the cloak with the cedar box, and she turned to follow Roan back into the yard. And the canvas at the door of the lean-to was pulled aside. Mara's blood stopped. It was not Lyra. It was Dina. Denna, the cook, who had slapped her twice that morning. Dina, 50 years old, arms like 2 loaves of bread, eyes small and wet and mean. Dina, with a wooden bucket on her hip and a look on her face that said she had come around the corner looking for the girl who had made her the joke of the hall and had found her. You, Dina hissed. She saw Roan half a heartbeat later, and her mouth made the shape of a question, but her body had already committed. The bucket came up. It was a heavy bucket. Bog water, Mara would realize later, carried from the scrubbing trough, half frozen at the edges, the kind of bucket that could open the side of a child's head if it landed right. It did not land. Roan did not draw his knife. He did not shout. He took one step forward, on his bad leg, and he did not look like he was moving fast, and yet somehow the bucket was suddenly in his hand, and Dina's wrist was in his other hand, and Dina was on her knees in the snow, making a small sound that was not quite a word. "Be quiet," Roan said very softly. Dina was quiet. "You are going to go back to the longhouse," he said still very softly. "You are going to tell no one what you saw. If I find out you told someone what you saw, I will come back to this yard tomorrow night and I will find you, and you will wish very much that you had not done that. Do you understand me?" Dina nodded. Her chins shook. "Say it." "I understand you." "Say I understand you, Roan Varro." "I understand you, Roan Varro." "Good." He let her go. Dina scrambled backwards in the snow and then got herself up, slipping, and then she was gone, and the canvas at the lean-to door fell back into place with a dry rustle. Roan did not turn to Mara. He was looking at the place where the canvas had fallen. "Move," he said. "She'll tell." "Yes." You said, she'll tell. I know. I said it that way so she'd tell fast instead of slow. Move, girl. We don't have the night we thought we had." They moved. They went back across the yard at twice the pace, and the cedar box was a lump against Mara's ribs, and the bad knife was a cold line along her hip, and the seal on her wrist had woken up again because her heart had, and she could feel it answering, her pulse beat for beat. And when they passed the forge, a figure stepped out of the shadow by the cold anvil, and Mara almost screamed before she recognized him. Hesh! He was wrapped in his wolf-hide coat, and his pipe was out of his mouth, and he had a bundle in his arms. A rolled thing, a woolen roll tied with cord. "Roan," Hesh said. "Tracker." "For the girl." Roan stopped. "What is it?" "Her mother's. I've been keeping it for her. I was going to give it to her when the seal opened. I didn't know the seal would open tonight." Roan looked at the bundle. He did not take it. "Mara," he said, "you take it, not me." Mara took it. It was heavier than it looked. It had the shape, inside the wool, of a folded garment, and something else, something hard and narrow, a handle, maybe, a haft. "Don't open it here," Hesh said. "Open it on the road, tomorrow, when you're out of the valley." "Hesh, go, girl." "Hesh, come with me." The old man smiled. It was the first time in 16 years she had seen him smile. "No," he said. "I'm 81 winters, and my leg is bad, and I'd slow you down for nothing. I stayed alive this long because I knew I had to stay alive until I could give you that bundle. I've done it. I'm tired, girl. Let an old tracker sit down. Hesh, go. Go with the king. Be what your mother couldn't be out loud." He put his hand on her shoulder. Just for a second. It was the first time he had ever touched her. Then he stepped back into the shadow by the anvil, and he was gone, and she could not even hear his footsteps on the snow. Mara stood there with the bundle in her arms, and the cedar box at her ribs, and the bad knife at her hip, and she did not cry, because she had cried her 2 tears for the year already, and whatever else needed to come out of her had other places to go now. "Walk, girl," Roan said very quietly. "We're not safe yet. We're not safe until that door is shut behind you. Walk." She walked. They made the stone house. Roan pulled the iron-banded door open himself, and the warmth and the cedar smoke hit her again, and Kyle was standing in the middle of the room with his arms crossed and his face in a place Mara had not yet seen it in. Tight, closed, the face of a man who had spent the last 12 minutes doing arithmetic he did not like the sum of. He saw her. Something in his shoulders dropped half an inch. "Anything?" he said to Roan. "A cook saw her. I handled it. She'll run her mouth, though." "How long?" "Hour, maybe less. The Beta's house is 140 paces from the longhouse, and Lyra is already not where her father put her." "How do you know?" "Because when we came up the yard just now, I could see that Lyra's window was open, in the cold, on the top floor of the Beta's house. Her curtain was moving, no candle behind it." Kale's jaw moved, just once. "She's gone," he said. She's gone, Rowan agreed. Where? Mara said. Where would she? Kael looked at her. She saw the arithmetic on his face finish. The only place in this compound, he said, that she thinks I will not follow her into, and the only place that has, tonight, what she wants. What? The Moonwell, Mara. I don't know what. It's a pool, a sacred pool. 300 paces into the tree line, north. It's where your pack blesses its rank. It's where they were going to bless her tomorrow night, in front of me. It's where every beta's daughter in Blackstone goes when she wants something from the old spirits and doesn't want her father to hear her ask. And tonight, Mara, she is going to stand in that water and she is going to ask those spirits for one thing because she has one thing she wants. Me. You. She can't, Mara said. She can't have me. I'm not. She can't have you. No. But she will try. And if she cannot have you, she will try to make sure no one can. And the Moonwell, Mara Vale, is the one place in 100 miles where the old rites still work, where a seal perhaps can be broken, or pulled, or unmade. Mara's wrist went hot. Not a pulse this time. A pull. She gasped, and her hand went to her wrist, and under the linen of the sleeve the lines of gold were climbing again. But this time they were not climbing outward from the disc. They were climbing away from her. They were straining toward the north wall of the stone house, toward the tree line, toward the dark, and under her skin the disc was trying to lift off her wrists like a compass needle finally feeling its pole, and she understood all at once, in a flood of cold horror, that Lyra was already there, that Lyra was already in the water, that whatever rite Lyra was performing, the seal could feel it, and the seal was answering it, and the seal was not going to be able to help itself. She started, Mara said. You're Kael. She started. He looked at her wrist. He looked at the wall. He looked at Rowan. Get my sword, he said. Rowan was already moving. Get the riders. Yes. Wake the alpha, not the beta. Harn can wake up in his own time. I want Corin and 4 of his oldest warriors at the tree line in 4 minutes, or I will come back from the well and take his hall apart rafter by rafter. Do you hear me? I hear you. Kyle turned to Mara. He took her by both shoulders. He bent his head so that their foreheads were almost touching, and his eyes were very close to hers, and they were not gray anymore. There was a wolf in them now, close to the surface, and she could see it moving there like something under ice. Listen to me, he said. I need you to come with me, Mara. I cannot leave you in this house without me, because that house is no longer the safest place in this valley. You are, because I am where you are. Do you understand? Yes. You are going to be in more danger in the next hour than you have been in your entire life. I'm going to put a sword in your hand because you said you had a knife, and because anything that walks toward you tonight with the wrong face on it needs to walk into steel, not bone. I'm going to stay in front of you. Roan is going to stay behind you. You are going to do exactly what I say. If I say down, you go down. If I say run, you run. If I say kill, you... He stopped. You run, he said. If I say kill, you still run. I will do the killing. She nodded. Her mouth was too dry to say yes. Rowan came back from the hearth with a sword. Not Kael's. Kael was already pulling his own from the peg by the door. A second sword. An older one, shorter, the grip wrapped in dark leather worn pale in places. Rowan held it out to her, hilt first. This was my first, he said. You get it back to me when you're done. She took it. It was heavier than she had thought it would be. Kael pulled open the door himself. The cold of the yard rolled in, and somewhere in the dark to the north, past the stockade, past the pines, she could hear something she had never heard in her life. A low, keening sound. The sound of a woman's voice lifted in the shape of a word that was not a word. A call, a long naming call. And under that call she could feel the thing on her wrist pull, pull, and pull, and pull. Walk behind me, Kael said. Now. He stepped out into the snow. Mara, with a cedar box pressed to her ribs and a dead mother's bundle over her arm and an old sword in her hand and a seal on her wrist that was trying to leave her body, stepped out after him. The stockade gate was open. It had not been open when she'd come back across the yard. Somewhere past it, in the dark between the pines, a single thin wisp of pale green smoke was climbing into the sky over the moonwell, and the voice in the trees was getting louder. The voice in the trees was getting louder, and Mara's wrist was trying to leave her body. She followed Kyle Draven out into the dark with the cedar box pressed against her ribs, and Hesh's bundle bouncing against her hip, and Roan Varro's first sword clenched so tight in her right hand that her knuckles had gone the color of bone. Her fingers did not know how to hold a sword. Her arm did not know how to carry one. The thing was heavy in a way she had no muscles for, and by the time they cleared the stockade gate, she had already shifted it twice in her grip and was starting to understand, in a cold, small way, that if she had to actually use this blade tonight, she was not going to live through the using of it. Kale did not look back at her. He walked with his own sword drawn, held low along the line of his right leg, and he did not waste any of himself on looking around. He knew where he was going. He was going at her pace. She realized this after the first 30 paces, when she stumbled on a root and did not fall because he had, without turning his head, shortened his stride by exactly the length she had lost. And the fact that he was doing it made her want to cry again, which was a thing she did not have time for. Rowan came 3 paces behind her. His bad leg made a soft, irregular crunch in the snow, and the sound of it was the only thing keeping her oriented in the dark. Left foot clean, right foot dragging, left foot clean, right foot dragging. She matched her breathing to it. Past the stockade, the world went blue. The moon was up, not full, but close, maybe 2 nights short of it, and it laid its pale light down over the snow between the pines like something spilled. The pines were very tall and very close together, and they had the quality, in the blue dark, of a room with no doors. Every 50 paces the path kinked. Every kink, Kyle paused, only for half a breath to listen. The voice did not stop. It was a woman's voice. It was not Lyra's. That was the first thing Mara understood, and it was worse than if it had been Lyra's, because if the voice were Lyra's, at least Mara would have known how many enemies were in front of her. This voice was older, much older. A low, strong alto, and it was speaking words that Mara had never heard in her life, and yet her seal was listening to them the way a starving dog listens to a butcher. Pulling, pulling, pulling. Kyle, she whispered. He lifted 2 fingers without turning his head. Quiet. She shut up. At the 3rd kink in the path, Kyle stopped. He stepped sideways off the trail into the shadow of a big pine, and he reached back and caught her sleeve and pulled her in with him without ever looking at her. And Roan came off the trail on the other side, and the 3 of them stood there in the dark, breathing through their noses while maybe 90 paces ahead through the pines, the blue dark opened up into a clearing lit by a low, pale green fire. Mara could see the moonwell now. It was smaller than she had thought. In all the stories she had heard in the kitchen, the moonwell was a great silver disk of water set in a ring of standing stones. And you could drown your enemies in it, and you could baptize your babies in it, and once, in an old story, a Luna had walked down into it and come back out as a white stag. In life, in the actual clearing, the moonwell was a pond maybe 10 paces across, choked at one end with winter reeds, and the standing stones were 5 small gray lumps that looked more like teeth than monuments. It was a miserable little hole in the earth. It was the most dangerous place Mara had ever stood within sight of. The green fire was in a brazier at the water's edge. It was not a fire. It was what had been in the fire. Some powdered thing, some burnt root. The smoke from it was the pale green wisp she'd seen climbing from the yard, and the smoke was not behaving right. It was not going up. It was creeping. It was going out across the water of the well in a slow, flat plane, like mist deciding where it wanted to be. At the edge of the water stood a woman Mara did not know, old, very old. Older than Hesh. She was not a Blackstone woman. Blackstone women of that age Mara could name on 2 hands, and this one wasn't any of them. She was small and bent, and wrapped in a hide that looked like it had been on her since she was a girl, and her hair was undone down her back in a single white rope, and she had her hands up, palms out, over the water of the well, and she was the voice. Kneeling in front of her, in the water, was Lyra Vance. Mara's first thought, stupid, the way thoughts are when you are frightened, was that Lyra must be freezing. She was in the pond to her waist. She had not undressed. The green wool of the welcome was soaked up past her hips and dragging around her, black in the moonlight, and her hair had come out of its braid and was hanging wet over her shoulders and down her back. Her arms were raised, her palms were up, and her face, Her face that had been beautiful that morning in the courtyard and terrible in the hall at the feast was something new now. A third face, one Mara had never seen on her, blank and shining and wet, and her lips were moving in time with the old woman's voice. Two other shapes stood at the edge of the pond. Girls, Mara's age. Dara, yes, the tall one from this morning, and Helm, the one who had given her the smile that was a promise. They were not in the water. They were outside the ring of stones, and they were holding something between them, stretched on a cord of braided leather, a piece of fabric. Mara's breath caught. It was a strip of apron, coarse, dun-colored, flecked with dried blood. Her blood, probably. The apron she had been wearing that morning. They had torn a strip off of it somewhere, from the hem maybe, while she'd been in the hall, while Lyra had been screaming, while the pack had been pretending not to look, and they had braided it onto a leather cord, and now that piece of her was held out over the green smoke at the edge of the well, like a lure on a line. "That's..." Mara breathed. "That's mine. That's mine." Kael's hand closed on her shoulder. Not hard, but present. "Don't move," he said under his breath. "That's... Why do they have... to pull the seal to them? To pull you through the seal? Don't move, Mara." "What are they trying to do?" "They are trying," Kael said, quieter, "to open the seal from the outside, to cut the lock without asking the door. Your mother put that thing on your wrist so that the wolf inside you would wake on its own, in its own time, when you could bear it. They are going to try to rip it open tonight, in that water, in front of that fire, and they do not care if the wolf comes out sideways, and they do not care if it kills you in the coming. That's why the old woman is a witch, a real one, not a village hedge witch. She has been paid, probably by Harn Vance, probably months ago, in case something exactly like this happened. The beta of Blackstone is not as stupid as he looks, Mara. He has always known what you might be. He just didn't know it tonight." Mara stared at Lyra in the water. Lyra's face, blank and wet, rapt. A face that was no longer attached to a person Mara could recognize. "She's going to die," Mara whispered. "Who is?" "Lyra. Look at her. She isn't in there anymore. Lyra Vance is doing this by choice, Mara. She doesn't know what she's doing. She knows enough. Kael, she's going to drown. If I could save her," Kael said, very low, "without losing you, I would. I cannot. In 2 more minutes, that witch is going to finish the call, and your seal is going to come off your wrist whether you want it to or not, and it will not come off clean. Do you understand me? Do you understand that if we do not stop them now, the thing that crawls out of your skin is not going to be the wolf your mother carried you to have?" Mara's hand closed on the sword. "Then stop them." "I'm going to." "What do I do?" "You stay here with Roan. You do not move out of this shadow unless he moves first. You keep the box and the bundle. You keep your wrist covered if you can. If I tell you to run back down that path, you go, and you don't stop until you hit the stockade gate. Am I clear?" "Yes." "Roan. Majesty. If anything comes out of that water that I do not put back in it, you take her and you go. Don't fight for me. Don't wait. Don't come looking. You take her, and you get her out of this valley, and you do not stop until you can see the towers of Hollow Reach." "Yes, Majesty." "Rowan." "I hear you, Kael." It was the first time Mara had heard Rowan use his name. Kael nodded, once, and then he stepped out of the shadow of the pine and into the moonlight, and he started walking toward the well. He did not run. He did not shout. He walked. The tall girl, Dara, saw him first. Her head came around. Her mouth dropped open because kings were not supposed to walk out of the pines in the middle of a blood rite, and then her mouth snapped shut because she was a Blackstone warrior's daughter, and she had been trained to survive exactly these kinds of moments. She dropped her end of the cord. The strip of apron fell into the green smoke. Helm, quicker, caught it before it hit the brazier. "Your..." Dara said. "Your... Majesty." Kael kept walking. "Your Majesty." The old woman at the water did not stop chanting. Lyra, in the water, did not lower her arms. Kael reached the edge of the clearing. He stopped at the first of the standing stones. He set his sword point into the snow, and he rested his hand on the pommel, and his voice, when it came, was the voice from the hall, a voice that did not need to be raised because it bent the air toward itself. Stop. The old woman did not stop. Stop, Cale said again, softer, which somehow made it worse. Old mother, turn around. Look at me. You know my face. Stop. The chant broke. It broke on a syllable that sounded like a word breaking. The old woman's hands came down slowly, and she turned. Slowly. And Mara saw her face for the first time. The witch's eyes were gone. Not scarred out, not empty sockets, but gone. In a way Mara could not explain to herself. The eyes were open, and they were in the skull, and they were dark, and they did not look at anything. They were just two holes full of the same green smoke as the fire. Not burnt, not blind, somewhere else. King of the North, the old woman said. Her voice, without the chant in it, was a cracked dry thing like pine needles rubbed together. You walk where you are not called. I walk where my mate walks. The old woman smiled. She is not yours yet. Old mother, you will step away from that water. You will bank that fire. You will send those girls home to their mothers. You will find the road back to wherever Harn Vance paid you out of, and you will go down it, and I will pretend for one night that I did not see your face here. Do that. I cannot. You can. No, she said, still smiling. I am past the point where I can, King. You are late. 5 minutes ago I could have walked away. 10 minutes ago I would have. Now the call is in the water, and the water is in the girl, and if I stop, the girl in the water dies, and the wolf in the other girl comes out anyway, and neither you nor I will put it back in. So, you are late. Sit down, or stand up, or draw your sword. It does not change what happens next. Cale's face did not change. He lifted his sword out of the snow. Then I'll end it. And what, King? You. Ah, she said, pleased. Try. She lifted her hands again, and the green smoke came off the water the way wool comes off a spindle, a long curling line of it, rising now, rising toward Kael. And Mara understood with a kind of sickness in her stomach that whatever had been in the water through Lyra for the past minutes was now being pulled out again and pointed and aimed. Kael moved. He was a blur. Mara had never seen a man move like that. She had not known a body could move like that. And afterward, she would never be able to quite remember what she had seen. Only that 1 second Kael was at the standing stone, and the next second he was 2 paces in front of the old woman, and he had brought his sword down in a clean, straight line toward the space where her neck met her shoulder, and the sword had not connected. The green smoke caught it. The blade stopped in midair, halfway through a downswing, as if Kael had swung it into a snowbank. The metal shook. Mara heard the sound, a high, ringing, wrong sound, and she saw Kael's shoulder flex with the effort of driving the sword downward through nothing, and the nothing did not give. The old woman tilted her head. I was sealing wolves, she said, before your grandfather's grandfather fed at his mother's breast. Did you think your steel was the problem I had to solve tonight, King of the North? Kael tore the blade free of the smoke. He came at her again. She did not even look at him. The smoke caught him again. This time it did not just catch the sword. It caught his wrist. It wound. It coiled. A thin green rope of it, looping once around his forearm, and Mara saw Kael's whole face change. Saw him set his jaw, saw the tendons in his neck jump, saw for one terrible second something that looked very much like pain in the eyes of a man who did not look like he allowed himself pain often. Kael, she breathed. Stay, Rowan said, next to her, flat. Stay, girl, stay. I know. She's burning him. She's a witch. Yes, stay. Lyra, in the water, opened her eyes. They were not Lyra's eyes anymore. They were the same color as Lyra's eyes, pale, pale blue, the color her father's were. But the thing behind them was not Lyra. It was the same nothing green as the smoke. Lyra's hands came down from over her head, and she stood up in the water, slow, slow, wool dragging off her in black sheets, and she turned her new green eyes on Mara across the clearing, and she smiled, a wide, wrong smile that Lyra Vance would never have allowed her own face to make in life, because it was ugly, and Lyra had never once allowed her face to be ugly. Sister, Lyra said. Her voice was not her voice. It was a smaller voice underneath Lyra's voice, and it was speaking through Lyra the way wind speaks through a loose window. "Sister," she said again, "come here. Come take it off. Come let me see you." Mara's wrist pulled so hard she almost dropped the sword. The lines of gold under her skin were not lines anymore. They were a map. The whole of her right forearm was glowing now, the pattern climbing up past her elbow, disappearing under the cloak, and she could feel reaching for her shoulder, for her throat, for the place just under her collarbone where her heart was beating. The disc on her wrist was lifting, not off her skin yet, but almost, like a pot lid rattling over a boil. "Roan," she whispered, "don't look at her. Roan, it wants me to. I know what it wants. Don't look at her." Kyle was still fighting the smoke. He had freed his wrist, but there was a smear of something black on his forearm, where the smoke had touched him, and he had gone down to one knee at the edge of the water. He was not giving up. He was refusing to give up. But the old woman was standing over him now, and she had her cracked, dry hands out over his head, and the smoke was coming off the fire again in a second rope, and this one was going to take him around the neck, and it was going to pull him into the water. And Kale could not stop it, and he knew he could not stop it, because his gray eyes had come up and found Mara in the pines, and what they said to her, across 100 feet of moonlight and smoke, was, "Run!" He did not say it out loud. He would not waste the breath. He said it with his face. Rowan's hand closed on Mara's shoulder and started to turn her back toward the path. "No," Mara said. "Girl, no." She pulled out from under his hand. It was not a hard pull. Rowan was an old man with a bad leg, and she was 16, and she had just been told by the first person in her life to ever say please to her that she was going to be alive tomorrow. And alive tomorrow did not include leaving him on the ice of a green pond while he went under. And she did not have a plan. And she did not have a wolf. And she did not have anything but the bad kitchen knife at her hip and her mother's box against her ribs, and the old sword too heavy in her hand, and she walked out of the pines anyway. "Girl? I'm sorry, Roan. Get back here. I'm sorry." She walked into the clearing. The old woman saw her come. The second rope of smoke, halfway to Kyle's throat, stopped. It stopped, and it turned, and it came for Mara instead. Mara did not have time to be afraid of it. Later, much later, she would be afraid of it. Right now, she was full of a feeling she had never felt in her life. And it was not courage, because she knew what courage felt like. Courage was Hesh smiling at her in the dark by the cold anvil. And this was not that. This was anger, real anger. 16 years of swallowed anger, every slap, every laugh, everything on your wrist I don't want him to see, every morning on her knees in the mud, every night on the pallet under the lean-to, listening to Blackstone warriors laugh about her in their cups. All of it, all at once. The smoke rope hit her. It did not wind her, it did not catch her. It went through her and came out the other side, and Mara felt it pass. A cold thing, a tugging thing, like a fish trying to swim through a net. And she saw, at the far end of the clearing, the old woman's blank, smoky eyes widen. "No," the old woman said. "Yes," Mara said. She walked. She did not run. She did not know how to run with a sword. She walked, and the lines on her arm were bright now, bright enough to be a lantern in the blue dark. And the disc on her wrist had lifted a hair's breadth off her skin and was spinning, slowly, like a coin on a table. And as she walked, she looked at Lyra in the water. "Lyra," she said. Lyra's green fire eyes blinked. "Sister," the not Lyra voice said. "Lyra, I know you're in there. Come here, sister." "Lyra, I am not your sister, and I am not coming in the water. You are coming out of it. I cannot. You can. She is holding me." "Who is?" The green eyes flicked just once to the old woman, then back. "Please," the not Lyra voice said, and this time it cracked, just a little. And it was not the not Lyra at all. It was Lyra, real Lyra, small under the other thing, 16 again, the way she had been when they had been children, and had sometimes, before everything went wrong, played the same games in the same yard. "Please, Mara, I did not know what she was going to do." The old woman turned her head. The green eyes found Mara. The cracked voice said low, "Be quiet, child." "Please," Lyra said again, and her voice broke entirely. And it was the voice of a girl, just a girl, a stupid, cruel girl who had wanted a crown and had been sold a lie. "Please," she said, "it was just a binding. She said it was just, please, please help me. Please, I don't want—" The water at Lyra's waist started to boil. Not a big boil. Not fire boil. A slow bubbling all along the line of her hips, and Mara understood with a cold shock of nausea that it was not the water that was boiling. It was Lyra. The old witch was pulling something out of Lyra from the waist down, and Lyra's skin was the thing that was boiling, and Lyra's pretty face had started to crumple, had started to go the way ice goes when it cracks across. "Please, hold on," Mara said. "Mara, hold on, Lyra." Mara turned away from the water. She lifted the old sword in both hands, and she looked at the old woman at the brazier, and she said, loud enough for the whole clearing, "Let her go." The witch laughed. "Child," she said, "you do not yet know what you are. I know I'm the one you're trying to get." "Yes." "Then get me." The green eyes went wide. "Come take me, old mother," Mara said. "Leave Lyra. Leave Kael. I'll come stand in the water. I'll take the seal off myself if that's what you want. Just let them go." "Mara." That was Kael, from his knee at the edge of the pond. His voice was a rasp. The first rope of smoke had loosened on him because the old woman's attention had shifted, but his hand was full of black smear and his breath was wrong. "Don't talk." "Quiet, Kael," Mara said, and she did not know where the nerve came from, because she had never told anyone to be quiet in her life, least of all a king. "I'm doing this." The witch laughed again. "Oh," she said. "Oh, little one. Oh, you are your mother's daughter. Yes, come. Come into the water. I will let your mate live. I will let that pretty doll of a beta's daughter live, for what she is worth. Come, come." She lifted her hands. Mara stepped forward. "Mara," Kael again, desperate now. "Mara, she's lying." "I know she's lying," Mara said, not looking at him. "What?" She kept walking. She walked past Kael. She walked past the nearest standing stone. She walked up to the edge of the moon well, and she looked down at the black water and the green smoke lying on it, and she looked across the water at Lyra Vance with her boiling hips and her frightened child face, and she looked at the old witch with the smoke where her eyes should have been, and she said, very calmly, "Old mother." "Yes, little one." "You said the call is in the water now." "Yes." "And the water is in the girl." "Yes." "And if you stop, the girl dies." "Yes, little one." Mara took a breath. "Then," she said, "I'm not going to let you stop." And she stepped, not into the water, but onto the edge of the brazier, set her boot against the hot iron leg of it, and with both hands on the hilt of Rowan Varro's first sword, she kicked the brazier over into the moonwell. The witch screamed. It was not a human scream. It was a scream that went up into the pines and bent them back at their tops, and the pale green smoke on the water of the moonwell, the carrier of her call, the rope she had fed between her hands and Lyra's open mouth, went out like a candle in a draught the second the green coals hit the black water and hissed. Everything happened at once. Lyra collapsed. Her knees went, and she went under, face first, and the boiling at her waist stopped because there was nothing pulling at it anymore. Kael was up on his feet. He had been up on his feet the second the brazier tipped, Mara would realize later, because he had understood what she was doing a full second before she did. He was already in the water. He was already grabbing Lyra by her wet hair and her wet collar and hauling her out of it. The witch screamed again and lunged at Mara. She was fast. Mara was not ready. The old woman had crossed the 10 paces between them before Mara could lift the sword properly, and her cracked hands were closing around Mara's wrist, the sealed wrist, and where her dry fingers touched Mara's skin, the gold lines jumped, and a sound came out of the witch. A short, choked, surprise sound. And smoke came off her skin where she had touched the seal, and she jerked her hand back. "Ah," she said, and now it was not a triumphant "ah," it was a hurt one, and her face had gone strange. Girl, you... Get away from me," Mara said. "You don't know. You don't... Get away from me." The sword came up. It came up in both of Mara's hands, and it was still too heavy, but anger has a way of making weights lighter, and the blade took the old woman across the chest. Not a killing cut, not the clean thing Kael had tried, a clumsy sideways chop that a kitchen girl who had never held a sword in her life could manage. And the witch went down. She did not bleed right. She bled green. Mara's stomach heaved. She did not throw up. She could not afford to. Dara and Heln, who had stood frozen at the edge of the clearing through the whole of it, broke. They turned and they ran into the pines. And Mara did not go after them, and she did not shout after them, and she let them go because she could not do anything else. Her legs had started to shake. Roan was already at her shoulder. She had not heard him come. He was there, and he was taking the sword out of her hand, and he was saying, "Sit down, girl. Sit down. I've got it. Sit down." She did not sit down. Not yet. She watched Kael in the water. He had Lyra in both arms. He was wading back toward the edge of the well with her, and Lyra was not moving, and for a second Mara thought Lyra was dead. And then Lyra coughed, a hard, ugly, wet cough, and her eyes opened, and they were pale blue again, her real pale blue, and they were full of tears. Kael laid her down in the snow. Mara walked over. She was not sure why she walked over. Lyra had tried to kill her 6 hours ago in a hall in front of 400 people. Lyra had held out a cord with a piece of Mara's apron on it over a witch's fire 10 minutes ago. Lyra had called her a stain on Blackstone blood in the courtyard that morning, and had, 1,000 mornings before this one, made her life the shape it had been. Mara did not owe Lyra Vance a single thing. She walked over anyway. She knelt down in the snow and she looked at Lyra, and Lyra looked back at her with a face that had nothing pretty in it anymore, lips blue, cheeks hollow, hair plastered, and Lyra's mouth opened and made a shape. Lyra said. "Shut up," Mara said. Lyra, shut up. Don't say it. Not now. I can't hear it now." She said you were... I know what she said. My father, Lyra. My father paid her. I know. Lyra started to cry. Not prettily. Not the way Lyra ever cried. She sobbed, a full-body sob, the kind of sob that only comes out of a person who has just realized how much of her life has been a lie, arranged by the people who were supposed to love her. And Mara, crouched in the snow beside her, with her own mother's cedar box under her cloak and her own mother's bundle on the ground beside her and a witch bleeding green in the snow 4 paces away, sat there and did not comfort Lyra and did not leave Lyra and simply, for a moment, kept her company, because she could not think of anything else a person would do. Kael crouched on Lyra's other side. He had taken off his cloak and he laid it over her, and then he looked across her at Mara, and his face, which had been tight and closed and full of arithmetic when she'd seen it last, was something Mara could not read, something raw, something near. "You kicked the brazier," he said. "Yes." "Into the well." "Yes." "That was a very stupid thing to do." "I know." "It worked." "I know." He almost, for the first time since she'd met him, laughed. It did not come out as a laugh. It came out as a single short breath through his nose and a small movement at the corner of his mouth. And Mara thought, I did that. I made that man almost laugh. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life. Then he said, quieter, "Mara, your wrist." She looked down. The glow had not gone out. She had thought, in some corner of her stupid, tired mind, that when the smoke fire on the water died, the gold under her skin would die with it, that the disk would settle, that whatever had been trying to come out of her would go back to sleep. It had not gone back to sleep. The lines of gold were still climbing. They were past her shoulder now. She could feel them at her throat, a warmth, a pressure, a kind of hum against the inside of her jaw. And the disk on her wrist had stopped rattling, but it had not gone dim. If anything, it was brighter, brighter than it had been in the hall, brighter than it had been when the witch was pulling at it. "Kael," she whispered. "What's happening?" "I don't, Mara." "I don't know, Kael. I... Behind them, the witch in the snow twitched. Roan stepped on her throat. He did it without drama. He walked up to where the old woman lay bleeding green, and he put his boot on her windpipe and shifted his weight onto it, and he waited. The witch's hand moved once. Her mouth opened. A thin thread of green smoke came out. Then nothing. Roan stayed on her throat another 10 seconds anyway, because Roan Varro was the kind of man who did not leave work unfinished. Then he stepped back. "Dead," he said. "Good," Kael said, not looking. "Not good," Roan said. "Not done." "Roan." "Majesty, look at the girl." Kael looked. So did Mara. The snow around her knees had started to melt. Not a little. A lot. A ring of it, the diameter of a wagon wheel, had gone dark and wet under her, and as she watched, the ring was growing. The heat was coming out of her. She could feel it now, not just in her wrist, in her chest, in her face, in her fingertips, which were starting to shake in a way that was not about cold. Her mouth had gone dry. Her teeth were humming. Kael, I'm here. Kael, something is... I know. I don't think... The seal. The seal is opening, Mara. The witch is dead. Yes. Then why... Because, he said, and he took her free hand in both of his, and he closed his fingers around hers so that she could feel the calluses on his palms and the warmth of his skin through the cold. Because what your mother said in you was going to open tonight, whether that woman was here or not. The witch did not start this, Mara. She only tried to steer it. The moon is up. You are 16 winters plus a night. You have stood over a death you caused and a wolf you saved. The seal was waiting for this. The seal knows. I don't want it to... I know. I don't want... Not here. Not with... She looked at Lyra in the snow under Kael's cloak, watching her with wet blue eyes. Not with her watching. Kael looked at Lyra too. Lyra very slowly closed her eyes. She did not say anything. She did not have the right to say anything. She turned her face away in the snow, and the gesture was the most human thing Mara had ever seen a Vance do. And somewhere inside the roaring in Mara's ears, she noted it and filed it and decided that she might, one day, much later, when she was not about to be ripped open from the inside out, remember it. Kael, she said. Her teeth were chattering now. Kael, it's coming. Yes. I don't know how. You don't have to know how. Is it going to hurt? He looked her full in the face. He did not lie. Yes, he said. How much? More than anything you have felt in your life, Mara Vale. And I am not going to be able to stop it, and neither is Roan, and we are going to sit here in this snow with you, and we are going to let it happen. And when it is done, we are going to be here. Do you hear me? When it is done, we will be here. Kael, I'm here. Don't let me... I won't. Don't let me hurt... Mara. Don't let me hurt anyone, Kael. Don't let... Look at me. She looked at him. The gray of his eyes had gone to a color that was not gray. It had gone to a color that was the dark of the pines behind him, and the dark of the water behind him, and the dark of everything that had been in her life for as long as she could remember. And she realized, in a last clear moment before the pain began, that she was going to be able to see that color from the inside of whatever came next. It was going to be something to hold on to. She had never had anything to hold on to before. Breathe, he said. Breathe, Mara. Once. With me. In. She breathed in. Out. She breathed out. Good. Again. In. She breathed in. The heat in her chest was a bonfire now. The lines on her skin had reached her collarbones, and they were climbing into her throat and her jaw and her temples. Her vision had started to tint gold at the edges. She could hear, very far away, her own voice making a small sound it did not mean to make. Kael, I've got you. Kael, I'm sorry. What for? I don't know. Don't be sorry for anything. Breathe. She tried to breathe. The pain hit. It hit her low in the belly first, because that was where wolves lived in girls who had them. And it was as if somebody had reached into her under the ribs and opened a fist that had been closed for 16 years. She arched. A sound came out of her that was not a scream. It was longer and deeper, and it was not only hers, because there was a second voice inside it now, a voice that had been waiting 16 winters in the dark behind her heart, and it was screaming too, with joy, with rage, with grief for all the moons it had missed. Kael caught her as she went over. Rowan behind him drew his sword. Not on her, away from her, outward, toward the pines, toward the paths, toward the men he had heard before any of them had. The bootsteps, the crunching snow, the torches finally coming up from the longhouse, because Dina had run her mouth, and Harn Vance had heard, and Alpha Corin had finally gotten off his chair. The warriors of Blackstone were spilling out of the tree line into the clearing now, a ragged, half-armed line of them, 10, 15, 20, and at their front, bare sword in hand, face the color of bad meat, was Beta Harn Vance, who saw his daughter in the snow under the king's cloak, and saw the witch dead at her boot, and saw Mara Vale on her knees with her whole body on fire, and made out of all of it the worst and last bad choice of his long bad life. He raised his sword, he pointed it at Mara. "Kill her," Harn Vance roared. "Kill the orphan. Kill her now. Kill her before she—" Mara's head came up. Her eyes opened. They were not her eyes anymore. They were gold. They were gold, and they were not looking at Harn Vance. They were looking through him. Mara was still on her knees in the ring of melted snow, but she was not the same shape she had been one breath ago. Her shoulders had dropped. Her back had lengthened. Her hands, one of them still caught in Kael's hands, had spread their fingers wide, and the lines under her skin were not lines anymore. They were a lattice, a full network of light under every inch of her, climbing and branching the way frost climbs a window. And at the center of all of it, her chest was pushing out and in, out and in, with a rhythm that was not the rhythm of a 16-year-old girl anymore. Kael's hands were still around hers, gently. He had not let go. "Mara," he said. She did not answer him, not with words. Her head turned, slow, heavy, like a thing made of stone learning to move. And she looked at him, and for 1 second the gold in her eyes cleared long enough for the girl to be there, and the girl was terrified. "I know," Kael said, quiet, as if she had spoken. I know. You're all right. I have you." "Kill her!" Harn Vance roared again, and the line of warriors behind him rippled, because they had not come up to this clearing to kill a girl. They had come because they'd been told a witch was loose in their woods, and a king was in the thick of it, and they had come with half their armor on, and some of them were still tying the laces of their leather. And now the beta of Blackstone was standing in front of them, with his sword up, screaming at them to cut down an orphan girl who was glowing like something the sun had dropped, and they did not know how to not obey him, and they did not know how to obey him either. Nobody moved, except one. Second line, left side. A warrior Mara didn't know by name, a thick young man with a red beard, maybe 22, maybe 23. The kind of young warrior who proved himself with speed because he hadn't yet had time to prove himself with anything else. He took 3 hard running steps out of the line, axe up, eyes on Mara, mouth open in the shape that meant he was about to shout. And Rowan Varro moved. For a man with a bad leg, Rowan moved like something that had never had a bad leg. His sword came up on a flat arc, low to high, left to right, and it caught the red-bearded warrior at the inside of the wrist. Not a killing cut, a stopping cut. And the axe dropped into the snow, and the young man dropped with it, clutching his arm and making a high, thin sound, and Rowan did not finish him. Rowan planted himself between the wounded man and Mara, and he turned his head to look at the line of Blackstone warriors, and his good eye went down the row of them slowly, face by face. "Next," Rowan said. "Nobody." "Anyone else?" "Nobody." "I will kill the next man who takes a step," Rowan said, still in that same flat, quiet voice he'd used on the cook at the lean-to. "I will kill the second man who takes a step. I will kill the third man, and then I will walk over to the beta, and I will cut his throat over his daughter, and then I will sit down in this snow with my king, and I will wait for you to find the stones to be the fourth. You understand me, Blackstone." They understood him. Harn Vance did not. "Harn," came a different voice, ragged, lower, older, and out of the tree line behind the warriors came Alpha Corin Blackstone, sword at his hip not drawn, a long wolf hide thrown on over his feast tunic, and his face when he saw the clearing was the face of a man who had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. He came through his own warriors without looking at them. They parted for him. He walked up behind Harn Vance, and he put one big red-knuckled hand on his beta's sword arm, and he pulled it down, and he did it gently. "Put the sword away, Harn. Corin, put it away. Corin, she is killing my daughter." "Your daughter is under the king's cloak, breathing. Look at her. Look at her with your eyes, Harn, not your mouth. Look." Harn looked. Lyra Vance was curled on her side in the snow under Kael's road cloak, and her eyes were open, and they were the right color, and she was shaking hard enough that Mara could see it from 10 paces off, and she was alive. That was the important part. She was alive because Mara had kicked a brazier into a witch's fire, and because Kael had hauled her out of black water by her hair, and Harn Vance, who had paid for this right to happen, had to stand in the snow and see that. His sword came down. His arm went with it. He lowered both, slow, and he did not put the blade back in its sheath. He just let it hang. "Corin," he said, thick. "Corin, she is going to—" "She is not," Corin said. Look at her. The light, she's not a wolf anymore. She is a wolf," Corin said very quietly. "For the first time in her life, Harn, she is a wolf. And we are going to stand in this clearing with her while she becomes one. We are going to do it because the king has not let us go. And we are going to do it because that girl just saved your daughter's life. And we are going to do it because you and I, old friend, are going to have a very long and very unpleasant conversation about what exactly you paid a witch to do in my woods tonight. Sheathe the sword. Now, Harn." Harn Vance sheathed the sword. Corin kept his hand on his beta's arm another second, and then he let go. And then he walked forward, past Roan, who watched him come and did not move aside, because Roan did not need to, past the dead witch. And he stopped at the edge of the melted ring of snow around Mara, and he went to one knee. He did not put a hand on her. He did not say anything. He just went to one knee, and he bowed his head, and he stayed there. The whole line of his warriors, one by one, like a slow wave going through a cornfield, followed him down. Not Harn. Harn stayed up. But every other Blackstone warrior in that clearing, every man who had come stumbling through the pines with half his armor on and a torch in his free hand, went to one knee in the snow and stayed there, and the clearing went quiet. Mara did not see them. Mara was past seeing. Whatever was happening to her now was happening on the inside, and Kael was still holding her hand, and Kael was still breathing with her. In, out, and the pain that had arched her back a minute ago had not gone away. It had only changed shape. It was not sharp anymore. It was vast. It had become a thing with weather. There was a long, low roll of it through her hips and her spine, and then it pulled back like a wave going out, and then another one came in, and each one was bigger than the last. "Kael," she managed through her teeth. "Kael, I don't know if you do. I don't." "Mara, listen. Listen to me. You know her name." "What?" "You're Wolf. You know her name. You've always known her name. Your mother whispered it to you before you were born. It's under everything. Reach for it." "I can't." "You can." "Kael, I don't." "Reach for it." She closed her eyes. Inside the closed eyes, there was gold. There was a great gold place she had never been in before, and she was in it now. And at the center of it, there was something curled up, something huge, curled up small, the way a grown dog will curl up in a child's basket to make itself little. And it lifted its head when she came into the gold place, and it looked at her, and its eyes were her eyes, hers, not a stranger's. "Oh," Mara said, out loud, in the clearing and also in the gold place at the same time. "Oh, you." The curled up thing uncurled. It was taller than she was. It had been, all this time, under her skin. It had carried her through 16 winters of slaps and cold and hides and bucket water, and it had never once shown itself because her mother had told it not to, because her mother, dying of fever at 30, had begged it with her last breath to stay small, stay small, stay small, keep my girl alive. And the thing, the wolf, had obeyed her, and it had been polite, and it had waited. It was done waiting. It looked at Mara with Mara's own eyes, and Mara, in the gold place, understood what her mother had named her. The name came up out of her chest the way water comes up a well, easily once the bucket finally drops. And she said it. She did not say it in the clearing. In the clearing, her mouth was locked shut. She said it on the inside, the way you say a name in a dream, and the wolf heard her. It came forward. It put its forehead against her forehead, and then it was not in front of her anymore. It was in her. It had always been in her. It was just finally in her with her permission. Outside, in the clearing, Mara Vale's body lifted off the melted snow, not high, a hand's breadth. Kael Draven, who still had her hand in his, stood up as she did, because he was not letting go. He was not letting go, and Roan, from his post between Mara and the Blackstone warriors, saw his king lifted 3 inches off the ground and did not even blink. The gold under Mara's skin left her skin. That was the closest word for it, later, when Mara tried to tell herself what had happened. Afterward, she would say, "The gold left my skin and became the shape." The light that had been mapping her forearm and her shoulder and her throat came out of her all at once, in a great soft breath, and the shape of it in the air was not a line of light anymore. It was the shape of a wolf. Enormous, long-legged, long-muzzled, not built like any wolf in the north, a wolf out of old carvings and older songs. And that shape came down around Mara like a cloak being settled on a child's shoulders. And when it settled, her body came down with it. The snow hissed. Where her boot had been, there was no boot. Where her hand had been in Kael's hand, there was a paw in Kael's hand. Kael had not let go. Kael was holding the paw the way he had been holding the hand, both of his hands around it, firm, quiet, not asking anything of it. And then, very carefully, the way you might set down a sleeping child, he let it go. The wolf staggered. It was huge. It was the biggest wolf Mara had ever seen. Not that she had a lot to compare it to, but it was bigger than the biggest pack wolf in Blackstone. Bigger than Corin by half. And its coat was not gray, and it was not black, and it was not brown. It was pale. Pale as old bone, pale as birchwood, pale as the inside of a shell. And along its flanks and across its shoulders were the same curling lines of gold that had been under Mara's skin, only now they were on the outside of her. And they glowed soft and steady, like banked coals under ash. It staggered because it had never stood on four legs before. Mara, inside it, had never walked on four legs before, and the signal from her head to its legs was the signal of a girl who had lived her whole life with 2 feet. It took a wobbling step. It took another one. It almost went down. Kael did not put his hands out to catch it. He stood, instead, 1 step away from its shoulder, so that if it fell, it would fall into him, and he would be there. But he was not going to hold it up, because this wolf had to learn to hold itself up, and he seemed to know that without being told. The wolf steadied. The wolf turned its great white head. The wolf looked at Harn Vance. Harn Vance, standing alone now in the middle of his own warriors, because all of them except him had gone to their knees, took a step backward in the snow. "You," the wolf said, except the wolf did not exactly say it. The wolf did not have a mouth the way a person had a mouth. The word came out of it anyway, in Mara's voice, inside the ear of every wolf in the clearing, the way alphas spoke sometimes to their own when they needed to, and the air was not sufficient. A pack voice, low and level and a little hoarse, the way Mara's real voice was hoarse tonight from smoke and crying and shouting at a witch. "You paid her." Harn did not answer. "You paid her to put me in the water." "Get—" Harn swallowed. His mouth had gone dry. "Get back, beast. Get back. You are not a wolf of this pack. You are not—" "You paid her to put your daughter in the water to pull me through. You paid her to kill me. You paid her in coin that was not yours, and you paid her in a promise that was not yours to make. Corin, you are not going to let this— You are not going to let her— "Shut up, Harn." Corin did not raise his head from his knee. "Shut your mouth." The wolf, Mara, turned its head away from Harn, and the gold eyes found Kael. And they did a thing no wolf in any pack Mara had ever heard tell of did. They softened. Kael was looking at her, just looking. His own face was open in a way she had not seen on him yet, not a smile. Just an open face, a face with nothing held back on it. And he was waiting for her to do whatever she was going to do next. She took a step toward him. She still wobbled on the 4th leg. She stepped with the left front and the right hind, and the right front went down half a second late. And the whole wolf dipped and recovered. She tried again. Left front, right hind, right front, left hind. That was the order, she understood now. Walk was a rhythm. 4 was not 2, 4 was 2 plus 2, offset, 3 steps, and she was in front of him. She stood almost to his shoulder in wolf shape. Her muzzle was nearly level with his throat. She could have closed her teeth on the great artery under his jaw in a single snap, and he could have done nothing about it. He lifted his hand, slow so she could see the movement, and he laid his palm flat on the side of her face. She pressed her head into it. She could not help it. Her eyes, which had been open and gold, closed. She leaned her whole weight into his hand, and she made a sound, a short, tired, completely undignified sound, somewhere between a whine and a sigh. the sound of a creature that had spent 16 years alone inside a body that was not letting it move, and had at last somebody's hand on its face. Kael did not say anything. He just kept his hand where it was, and he breathed, and she breathed with him. Somebody in the line of kneeling warriors made a small sound. It was not a laugh, and it was not a sob. It was the sound a person makes when they have been holding a belief about the world their whole life, and the belief has just cracked, and they are standing in the snow with the pieces. Roan, still facing his line of kneeling men, said without turning, "You are looking at a Luna, Blackstone." A small rush of breath went through the men. "Keep looking," Roan said. "It'll settle in." Corin Blackstone lifted his head off his knee. "Your Majesty," he said, and his voice came out rough. "Corin, I didn't know. No, I didn't. I swear to you, on my father's blood, I didn't. The Vance family brought her to our kitchen 16 years ago, and I was told an orphan. An orphan. I was not told. I know. If I had known, Corin. Your Majesty, if I had known, Corin." The old Alpha stopped. Kael had not moved his hand off Mara's face, but he had turned his head, and his eyes were on Corin now. And they were the wolf gray again, and they were tired, and they were not unkind. "Corin," he said, "if you had known, you would have been dead for 16 years, because Harn would have killed you before he let you keep her. And then there would be no Alpha in this hall, and Harn would be wearing your tunic, and there would be no witness tonight who could be anything other than Harn's. So no. Your not knowing was the thing that kept her alive. Do not apologize to me for it. Apologize to her." Corin swallowed. He turned on his knee to face the huge white wolf with her head in the king's hand, and he bowed his head a second time. "Mara Vale," he said, "daughter of Issa, of—" He stopped. His voice caught on something. "I served your mother. She was a good woman. She was the best of the women who came to this compound the year before you were born. I knew her for 6 months, and then she married into, well, I knew her. She was kind to me when my first wife died. She sat with me. I have thought many times in the last 16 years that the girl in my kitchen had Issa's cheekbones, and I have told myself each time that I was an old man seeing ghosts. I am sorry. I should have listened to the thought and not to the lie. I am very, very sorry." Oh, the great white head turned in Kael's palm. The gold eyes looked at Corin Blackstone. Mara, inside the wolf, did not know what to do with the Alpha of Blackstone kneeling to her. 3 hours ago, she had been scrubbing blood out of a deer hide behind his kitchens. 1 hour ago, she had been standing at the bottom of the dais in his great hall, waiting for his beta's daughter to slap her in front of 400 people. Now he was on his knee in the snow, and his eyes were wet, and he was apologizing to her, and she did not, in any corner of herself that had existed before tonight, have an answer for a man doing that. The wolf leaned forward and set her nose against the top of Corin's bowed head. It was as light as a breath. It was less pressure than a hand. She did not know why she did it. Some part of her remembered that the old Alpha had once, when she was 7 years old, caught Dina about to hit her in the main hallway and had said, "Dina, go pot some onions," in a voice that had been perfectly mild and had still somehow turned Dina around and marched her back into the kitchen without a blow. Mara had forgotten about that for 9 years. Her wolf, apparently, had not. Corin did not move. He let the touch happen, and he let it end. And when Mara drew her head back, his eyes were closed, and one tear had gone down into his beard, and he was not going to say anything about it. Kael looked over Mara's big, pale shoulder at the line of warriors. "Get up," he said. They got up. "You four." He pointed without seeming to choose. "Pick up the witch. Carry her back to the compound by her arms. I want her laid in the courtyard under a sheet. Nobody touches the body. Nobody burns it. Nobody moves it again until I say, 'You three, go to the beta's house. Search it. Bring me anything you find that looks like coin, markers, letters, or the old woman's things. Anything. You." He pointed at the red-bearded young man on the ground, the one Roan had opened at the wrist. "Can you walk?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Yes, I can." "Then get up. Bind that wrist with your own belt and go back to the longhouse. Tell Mistress Pell the king wants her in the East Guest Hall in 20 minutes with fire, bread, hot water, clean linens, and wool for a woman." Not a girl. A woman. Then go to the kitchens and find the old tracker. Hesh, bring him to me at the stone house. Walking. Do not frighten him. He is under my hand, do you understand? Yes, your majesty. Go. The young man got up, cradling his wrist, and he went. Corin. Your majesty. Stand up. Corin Blackstone stood up. Your beta and I are going to have a conversation tonight in the hall. You are going to be in the room because it is your hall and because this is your pack. You are not going to speak. When I am done with Harn Vance, I'm going to tell you what I have decided. You are going to say yes, your majesty. Do you understand me? Yes, your majesty. Good. Your majesty. What? My daughter is 6 winters old. Her name is Piet. If anything tonight, if the whole pack turns on you, on her, if nothing is going to happen to your daughter, Corin. She is in the longhouse, in the east wing, the second room on the left. I said nothing is going to happen to her. I know, your majesty. I am only telling you, in case, so you know where she sleeps. Kael looked at him a second longer. All right, he said. Now I know. He turned back to Mara. His hand had never left her face. It left now, and she opened her eyes, and she was not ready for the cold of the air where his hand had been. And she made the same small, undignified sound, and he almost smiled. Can you walk back? He said. Like this? She did not know. She lifted a front paw. She put it down. She lifted a hind paw. She put it down. She tried 2 together. She got 2 paces, and she understood in a rush that she could do it, but she could not do it for long. Her legs were trembling. The second set of lungs in her chest had started breathing too hard. She was going to run out of whatever was in her in about 100 paces. I don't know if It's all right. We can do it in 2 trips. What do you... Lie down, Mara, right here, just for a minute. Let me lift your sister. My Lyra. I'm going to get her back to the stone house first. Then I'm coming back for you. Roan will stay with you. Lie down. She did not want to lie down in the snow. She also did not have the legs to keep standing. She folded slowly, carefully, the way she had seen old dogs fold themselves. The front first, and then the hind. And she lay down in the melted wet ring she had made, and it was warmer there than anywhere else in the clearing, and she realized with a tired surprise that it was warm because she was warm. The wolf was warm. The wolf was much warmer than a girl. Steam came off her coat in little ghosts. Kael went to Lyra. He crouched and lifted her out of the snow like a child, cloak and all. Lyra's head fell against his shoulder. Her eyes were half open. They found Mara, the wolf, across the clearing, and they stayed on her. Mara? Lyra said, very small. The wolf lifted her great head. Mara, Later, Lyra, Kael said. No, I need her to... She can hear you. Mara, I'm sorry, I know it doesn't mean... I know what I know, I wanted you to hear me say it before, because if something, I wanted you to hear it, that's all. The wolf's gold eyes looked at Lyra Vance for a long beat. Mara, inside the wolf, understood that the body she was in now did not carry the 16 years the way her other body did. Her wolf had not been slapped. Her wolf had not scrubbed the hides. Her wolf had not lain on the pallet in the lean-to listening to Lyra's laugh drift across the yard from the beta's house on feast nights. Her wolf had heard all of it, because her wolf had been under her skin the whole time. But her wolf had not lived it. The wolf did not have the same grudge the girl did. It was the girl who had to answer, and the girl, inside the wolf, was not ready to say, I forgive you. She was not going to lie to Lyra's face, not even now, not even with Lyra and Kael's arms soaked and blue-lipped and smaller than Mara had ever seen her. So the wolf did the only honest thing Mara could come up with in the half-second she had. She lowered her head, not to Lyra, to the snow. A small nod, the kind a person gives to another person when they have heard them, and they are not agreeing, but they are not closing the door. Lyra's eyes filled up. Okay, she said. Okay, that's fair, that's... Okay, Mara. Okay. Kael carried her out of the clearing. Roan stayed. He sat down on a fallen pine trunk at the edge of the melted ring, 6 feet from Mara's shoulder. and he put his sword across his knees, and he lit, for the first time since Mara had met him, a short clay pipe out of his coat. The smell of the tobacco was sharp and blue in the cold air. He did not look at her. "Don't try to sit up, girl." She had been about to try to sit up. She lay back down. "First-time shifters get the shakes," Rowan said, around the pipe. "Your legs are going to be a mess for an hour. Just lie. I'll tell you when." She made a small noise of agreement. "Don't try to talk either. That voice you were doing, the pack voice, that's hard on a new one. Save it." Small noise. "Good girl." They sat that way for maybe 3 minutes. Then Rowan said, without looking at her, "You saved my king's life, you know." She didn't know what to do with that. The smoke had him. I saw it from the trees. Another 20 seconds and he'd have been in the water. Not a man alive has pulled Kyle Draven out of a thing like that before, because not a man alive has needed to. You kicked a brazier over a pond. Not a tactic I'd have written down in a book. Worked, though. She made a small noise that was meant to be a laugh. It came out as a huff. "Yeah," Rowan said. "Laugh now. Later you'll be embarrassed. Everybody is. The first time they do something mad in front of an old soldier. I won't tell. Much." Small huff. He looked at her then, his one good eye on her gold one. The bad milk eye pointed out at the clearing, keeping watch. "Listen to me, girl." She listened. "You are a Luna now, whether you know it or not. Whether you want it or not. Whether that mouthy beta in the snow likes it or not. Kyle will tell you all of this later in pretty words. I'm going to tell you now in the plain ones, because I am old and I do not have the patience for pretty words, and because you have had exactly 1 hour of being something other than a kitchen girl, and you need the plain ones first." She waited. Being a Luna is not being loved. Being a Luna is not being obeyed. Being a Luna, Mara Vale, is being the last thing in the room that pack wolves look at when they do not know what to do. You will be that thing. Tonight you already were that thing, and you did not know it, and that is the only time in your life it is going to be allowed to happen by accident. After tonight you do it on purpose. You stand when standing is what's needed. You kneel when kneeling is what's needed. You kick the brazier when kicking the brazier is what's needed. You do not get to be afraid in the room. You can be afraid before the room and after the room, not in the room. Do you understand me? Small sound. Good. 2. You are going to have to learn very fast that a great many people are going to want you dead. That's not a thing to be sad about. That's just a thing to know, the way you know in the fall that it's going to snow. Every crown in the north is going to hear what happened in this clearing by the end of the week, and half of them are going to decide that an old bloodline waking up is the worst thing that has happened to them in their lives, and they are going to send wolves after you. Small ones first, then bigger ones. You're going to have to get good at not being in the place where the wolf is looking. I will teach you. Kyle will teach you. Hesh will teach you, if he is willing. You will learn. But you learn starting tomorrow. Do you hear me? Small sound. 3. He took the pipe out. 3 is the important one. Listen. She listened. Kyle Draven is a good man. I have served him 13 years. I have served 2 kings before him. He is the best of the 3, and he will never know I said that because I will not tell him, and neither will you. He has never had a mate. He has had women because he is not a monk and neither am I. But he has not had a mate. And he has not had a mate because his wolf has been looking for something very specific for a very long time. And tonight it found it. That is a thing you need to understand. Girl, that is not infatuation. That is not a kindness. That is not charity to a kitchen orphan. When Kyle Draven went to one knee in the Blackstone Hall in front of 400 people, he did not do it for a seal. He did it because his wolf had already chosen you, and his wolf does not change its mind, and he does not argue with it. She was very still. Now I'm telling you this from, Rowan said, not because I think you are going to be cruel to him. You are not going to be cruel to him. You are a 16-year-old girl who has scrubbed other people's blood off other people's hides for half her life, and you are not made of the stuff it takes to be cruel to a man who is kind to you. I am telling you because somebody needs to, and because Kyle will not tell you this himself. Because Kyle does not know how to say things about his own heart out loud. So I am telling you, his wolf chose you. His man loves you already, and will not say it for weeks yet because that is how his man is built. And when he does say it, you are going to be tempted to tell him you are not good enough. You're going to be tempted to tell him you are a kitchen girl and he is a king and you are not worthy. You are going to be tempted to apologize to him for loving him. Do not do that. She looked at him. Do you hear me, girl? Do not do that. You will insult him if you do that. You will insult his wolf. You will insult the 16 years you spent in those kitchens earning what you are. You owe him the courtesy of letting him love what he loves without you arguing him out of it. Nod if you hear me. The great white head moved. Once. A clear nod. Good. He put the pipe back in his mouth. They sat a while longer. Mara's legs stopped shaking in stages. Her second set of lungs slowed. The gold lines in her coat did not go out, but they dimmed the way embers dim when a fire has burned down to its long, hot heart. The steam off her flanks thinned. She thought, I could sleep right here. I could sleep in the snow for a year. She did not sleep. She lifted her head instead and looked at Hesh's bundle, still lying where she had dropped it when the pain hit. The wool roll, the hard thing inside it. Roan, small sound. The bundle. He reached out with his sword point and hooked the cord and dragged it to him. He untied it, slow, with one hand, without ever putting down the pipe. The wool came open. Inside was a dress, a woman's dress, a plain one, dark blue, woolen, heavy, lined in undyed linen. The kind of thing a working woman would wear to a council, not a feast. It had been folded carefully. At the edges, the folds had begun to yellow with age. It had been kept, Mara understood, in a cedar chest for a long time. Her mother's dress. And inside the dress, wrapped in the linen lining, was the hard thing. A knife. Not a kitchen knife, a long, narrow knife in a plain leather sheath, the grip made of bone, bound with sinew gone dark with time. On the pommel of the knife was set a single round stone, a pale, pale blue, the color of a winter sky, with a gold fleck in it like the flick of a wolf's eye turning. Roan's breath went out. Huh, he said. That was all he said for a long second. Then very quietly, Girl, do you know what that is? Small sound. No. That is a bone knife of the sealer line. There were 12 of these made. 12 in the whole north. One for each of the women in the order I told you about earlier. If this one came down to you, through your mother's mother, it means something. What? It means you are not only a sealed pup, Mara Vale. It means your mother's line did the sealing. It means the reason that little witch tonight failed to pull your seal off was not only because the seal was strong. It was because the seal was yours. Your mother's line put it on you. No hedge witch of Harn Vance's coin was ever going to be able to take it off, because the only hands in the world that can take it off are yours. The great white head stared at the knife. Do you understand what that means, girl? No. It means nobody gets to open you, ever, except you. It means 100 old crowns in the north who go to sleep tonight afraid of an old bloodline waking up are going to wake up tomorrow and realize the old bloodline has not just woken up. It has woken up with the knife it needs to do the sealing on its own pups. Their pups. Any pup in any hall, Mara. You are not the last of a line. You are the first of a line. A new one. Yours. Under your hand. By your choice. Do you understand now? She did not fully. Not yet. The wolf understood before she did. The wolf's golden eyes narrowed on the knife on the snow, and something hot and deep moved in Mara's chest. Not anger this time, not even fear, but a thing she had never held inside herself before. A thing that she would, over the weeks and months that followed, slowly learn a name for. Purpose. Bootsteps in the snow. Rowan's head came up. Mara's head came up. Kale was coming back through the pines alone, without Lyra now, with his sword sheathed and his hands empty, and he stopped at the edge of the clearing when he saw the knife on the wool at Roan's boot. He looked at it. He looked at Roan. Is that? Yes. Where was it? With the tracker. He gave it to her an hour ago at the forge. I didn't open it. Kale walked the rest of the way across the clearing. He crouched, slow, beside Mara's big pale shoulder, and he set one hand flat on her flank, right over the place where her ribs rose and fell. Mara. Small sound. I'm going to have you carried back if you can't walk. The stone house is ready. Mistress Pell is in it, with enough linens and wool for 3 women. Your sister, Lyra, is dry and wrapped and asleep in the inner room. I have warriors on the Beta's house. Tomorrow we will ride. Tonight you sleep. Do you hear me? Small sound. Good. He leaned his head down, and he put his forehead against the side of her great white muzzle, and he held it there, and he shut his eyes. Good girl, he said quietly, so only she could hear it. And Mara, wolf, Mara, girl, Mara, all of her at once, felt for the first time in 16 winters, something in her chest come fully unclenched. From the path behind them, from the direction of the stockade, a single voice rose. A warrior's voice. Then another. Then 3. Then 10. They were not shouting orders. They were not shouting warnings. They were calling her name. Mara Vale. Mara Vale. Mara Vale. Not a chant. Not yet. Just voices in the dark, one to another, passing the name down the line, learning how it sat in the mouth now that it was the name of someone they were going to have to stand up when she walked into the room. Kael lifted his forehead off her muzzle. He was almost smiling. Hear that? He said. Small sound. That's your pack deciding what to do. The great white wolf looked past him, toward the pines, toward the voices, toward the long blue path back to the compound that had been her whole world 3 hours ago and was now something smaller than she was. For the first time in her life, Mara Vale did not lower her eyes. For the first time in her life, Mara Vale did not lower her eyes. And the voices in the pines heard it somehow, the way a pack always hears things like that. And they got quieter instead of louder. Kael Draven stood up out of his crouch at her shoulder. He reached down and gathered the dress and the bone knife into the wool again, carefully, the way another man might gather a sleeping child. He tied the cord with one hand. He tucked the bundle under his left arm. His right he offered, not to help her up, but open, palm down, above the great white head. A question, not a command. Mara pushed her muzzle up into his hand. Let's go home, he said. Home was not a word she had a place for. She filed it. She would figure it out later. She got her front legs under her, then her back legs, and she stood, trembled, held. Kael did not steady her. Rowan did not steady her. They let her stand by herself because they both understood, without having to say it to each other, that being steadied in front of the warriors waiting on the path was not the gift it looked like. She stood. She took 1 step, 2. By the 4th, she had the rhythm again, and by the time she cleared the last standing stone, she was walking, not prettily, but on her own. The Blackstone warriors had come halfway up the path when they'd started calling her name. They stopped when she came out of the pines. 20-odd of them in a rough wedge, torches low, breath white in the blue dark, and at the point of the wedge, waiting, was Corin Blackstone. He did not kneel again. He had already done that. He had the sense not to make a second ceremony where the first one had been enough. He stepped aside from the center of the path instead, and his men stepped aside with him, opening a lane through the torches wide enough for a wolf and a king and an old soldier to walk down together. And as Mara passed, one by one, each warrior lowered his torch until the flame was below her shoulder. An old gesture, older than Blackstone, older than the kingdom, a thing they had not done in this pack in anyone's living memory. She walked through a tunnel of lowered fire. Harn Vance was not in the line. Mara noticed it and did not ask about it. Corin, falling in at Kael's left shoulder as they crested the last rise, said quietly, without looking at anyone, I put him in his own wine cellar with 2 of my oldest men and the door barred from the outside. He's not going anywhere until your majesty says. Good, Kael said. I didn't want to kill him in his own yard in front of his daughter. That's mine to do or not do. Yes, your majesty. We'll talk in the hall after the sun's up, not before. Your pack needs to sleep before it hears what it's going to hear. Yes, your majesty. The compound came into sight through the pines. Every window was lit. Every window. Mara had never in her life seen Blackstone that lit at night. They banked fires at midnight. They rationed candles. And it took her a second to understand what she was looking at. Word had gone through the pack. Somebody, Mistress Pell probably, or one of the young warriors sent to fetch her, had told the old women, and the old women had told the girls, and the girls had lit every lamp in the longhouse. And then somebody in the east wing had lit the lamps in the east wing, and then the stables, and then the lean-tos, and by the time the wolf walked out of the tree line, with the king of the north at her shoulder, the whole Blackstone compound was burning like a lantern in the snow, and the pack was out in its yards with its coats thrown on, waiting to see her. There were maybe 300 of them. They did not cheer. Mara, inside the wolf, was grateful for that. A cheer would have been too much. She did not think her legs would have held under a cheer. What they did instead was stand. They stood in their yards, men and women and children, with their hands at their sides, and they watched her walk the long path down through the stockade gate and across the outer court and past the well and the forge and the kitchens, and they did not say anything, and their eyes did not leave her. And it came to Mara, slowly, because her head was tired and her wolf was tired and her heart was full of a thing that did not fit inside it yet, that she had stood in this same yard 1,000 nights of her life, and no one had looked at her once, and tonight 300 people were looking at her at the same time, and none of them were laughing. An older woman, Tess, Bella's assistant in the kitchen, who had given Mara extra bread twice in 16 years when she'd thought no one was watching, stepped out of a doorway as Mara passed and set a small bowl of something hot on the snow at the wolf's foot. It was goat's milk. She didn't say anything. She just set it down and backed up into her doorway, and she did not bow and she did not kneel. She only pressed her hand flat against her own chest, over her heart, for a second, and then she put it back at her side. Mara dipped her muzzle. She did not drink. She could not in this shape, not here, not with half the pack watching. But she let the old woman see her notice. That was the whole conversation. I saw that you saw me, tonight and every time before that you did. The old woman's eyes filled. Mara walked on. By the time they reached the stone house, her legs were trembling hard enough that she thought she might go down on the last 3 paces, but she did not go down. Cale pulled the iron-banded door open himself, and Rowan stepped through first, checking the room, and then Kyle held the door while Mara went in. It was different inside. Mistress Pell had moved with the quiet violence of a woman who had been waiting her whole career to be given a night like this. The long cedar table had been pushed against the wall. In its place, near the hearth, was a deep wooden tub full of steaming water, a folded stack of linens on a bench beside it, and 3 different oils in clay flasks that she would never have wasted on a kitchen girl 3 hours ago. A great pile of clean wool, blankets, a shift, a long warm dress Mara could already see was too nice for her, sat on a second bench, and over the hearth a small cauldron was simmering something that smelled like mutton broth and thyme. Mistress Pell herself was standing against the far wall with her hands clasped in front of her apron and her chin up, and when the great white wolf came through the door, the old woman did an odd thing. She bent her knees and went down 6 inches in a small dipping bow and came right back up. "Your ladyship," she said. It came out steady. Mara wanted to laugh. She had been girl to Mistress Pell for 16 years. She had been girl and you and that one, and once, memorably, the veil thing. Now she was your ladyship. It was the same mouth. It was not the same world. She was not going to laugh. Mistress Pell was doing her best, and her best was better than a lot of people's best, and Mara was going to let it be enough. Lyra was in the inner room. The door to it was ajar. Mara could see, through the gap, the shape of her asleep on the low bed, wrapped in 3 wool blankets, her hair damp and flat against the pillow, her mouth slightly open in a way Lyra would never in her life have allowed anyone to see if she had been awake. A young Blackstone girl Mara did not know by name. One of the kitchen apprentices was sitting on a stool beside the bed with her hands in her lap, watching Lyra breathe. She did not look up when Mara came in. Mistress Pell had given her a job, and she was doing it. "The inner room is for the beta's daughter," Mistress Pell said to Kyle, quietly, as if Mara were not 4 feet from her. "I thought it better than sending her back to her father's house tonight. If your majesty disagrees, I can have her moved." "No, leave her." "Yes, your majesty. The lady will have this room. I will sleep across the door with the girl who sits with the beta's daughter. Rowan Varro can have the outer bench by the fire. If your majesty wishes a cot brought up, I can—" "The bench is fine, Pell." "Yes, your majesty." "The king will sleep at the hearth. I want a pallet at the foot of her bed." Mistress Pell's face did not move. She had trained her face for 40 years. "Yes, your majesty." "Thank you." Yes, Your Majesty. Kael looked at Mara. He set the wool bundle down on the bench with the dress and the knife inside it. He lowered himself to one knee beside her, and he put his mouth near her ear, and he said very softly, for her alone, Mara, you need to shift back now. You can't sleep as a wolf, not the first time. The body doesn't know how. It'll wake you every hour. Shift back. Mistress Pell has a shift and a blanket ready. I won't look. She had not thought about that. She had not thought about the fact that she was not wearing clothes under the wolf. A sudden, late, wild panic went through her. The first real girl panic she had felt since the clearing. And her head must have jerked because Kael's hand came up, very slow, and rested just behind her ear. Mara, I don't know how to... Close your eyes. Go back to the gold place. Ask her to lie down. That's all. She'll do it. She has been waiting 16 years to be let out, and now she has. She'll go back when you ask. Just ask her. She closed her eyes. The gold place was still there. It was dimmer now because she was tired and because her wolf was tired, but it was there. The huge pale shape inside her was lying down already, comfortable, tongue out, the way a hunting dog lies down after a long day. Mara looked at her. She did not know the etiquette. She said stupidly, in her own head, Thank you. Is it all right if... Can you... Would you... The wolf yawned. It was an amused, tolerant yawn. Ask properly, the wolf thought, in a voice that was Mara's and not Mara's. Go on. Please come back in. The wolf stretched, unhurried. Then, in one easy motion, she was small again, and inside, and Mara, on the floor of the stone house, was a girl in a puddle of wet fur that was no longer attached to her. Cold hit her. The world hit her. The shift went over her head. The warm wool hit her skin. A second, heavier blanket was thrown around her shoulders. Mistress Pell did not look at her face, was careful not to look at her face to give her the courtesy. And Mara, inside the shift in the blanket, felt the shake in her arms finally have somewhere to go. Kael, she said, I'm here. You can turn around. He turned around. He looked at her for a long second. A girl in a shift and a blanket, pink-faced, wet-haired, 16. And something in his jaw softened in a way that Mara later would carry with her a very long time. Hi, he said. Hi. Sit down before you fall down. She sat down on the bench by the hearth. Mistress Pell put a cup of broth in her hands. She drank it because she had been told to, and the heat of it went down into her chest and made a small pocket of ease there. And she realized all at once that she was hungry. Not kitchen scrap hungry, but something new, a wolf hungry, a hunger for red meat. And Mistress Pell, reading her face, said, There is a plate, lady, and put a plate on the bench beside her with cold mutton and cheese and bread and a single early winter apple, and Mara ate it. All of it, the apple last. She ate the apple down to the seeds. Somewhere behind her, Hesh was brought in. He came in leaning on Roan's arm. His eyes found her by the fire, and his face did something Mara had never seen on it. It opened. The old tracker, who had held his mouth shut for 81 winters, opened his face and let it be seen. He did not kneel. She would not have wanted him to kneel. He walked across the room with his pipe in his hand, and he sat down on the bench beside her without asking, the way he used to sit down on the bench outside the curing shed when she was small, and he put his hand on her wrist, her left wrist, the one without the seal, and he held it. Issa's girl, he said. Hesh. Knew the night she brought you. I figured. Saw the cord. She didn't hide it from me. She said, Old man, do not tell anyone, and do not let anyone in this pack raise her past 8 winters without me. And I said, Issa, if I'm not dead by then, I'll do my best. And she said, and if you are dead by then, the knife will find her anyway, and I didn't know what she meant until tonight. The knife. The one in the bundle. I buried it under my floorboards the week your mother died. I thought I'd rot before I dug it up. Hoped I'd rot before I dug it up, tell you the truth, but I always knew where it was. Why didn't you give it to me earlier? Because you weren't ready to hold it, girl. You'd have looked at it and you'd have thought, well, what am I supposed to do with this? And you'd have put it somewhere in a drawer, and one of those Vance creatures would have found it. You needed to walk into a clearing and put your boot against a witch's brazier before you got to hold that knife. You did that tonight. Knife's yours now. She looked at him a long second. Hesh. Come with us to Hollow Reach. No. Hesh. No, girl. Please. Mara. He took his pipe out of his mouth. I am 81 winters. My leg is gone. I have eaten my last real meal of deer 6 years ago, and I haven't had a tooth that could chew a tough thing since. I have been staying alive out of stubbornness. I kept my word to your mother, and I am done. I would like to sit by my fire, in my own shed, and let go. Let me. Hesh? You are not going to argue with me, girl. Her eyes stung. She argued anyway. You could sit by a fire in Hollow Reach. I could. I wouldn't. I'd freeze on the second night of the road. You know I would. Don't ask an old dog to run his last mile just to say goodbye somewhere prettier. She bit down on the inside of her lip hard enough to taste iron. She nodded. All right, she said. Good girl. But I'm keeping you in the whatever. Whatever honor a new Luna gets to give an old tracker, you get it. I don't want honors. Too bad. He almost laughed. And then his eyes went wet, and he looked at the fire instead of at her, and he put his pipe back in his mouth, and he did not say anything else for a while, and she did not push him. She leaned her shoulder against his shoulder the way she had wanted to for years, and had never let herself, and he did not push her off, and they sat like that until her hair had dried. It was gray by the window when Kael came to her. He had not slept. She could tell from his eyes. He had sat at the hearth, as he'd said he would, and he had let her doze against Hesh's shoulder, and he had written something by candlelight on a piece of wax paper and sent it out with one of the riders, and now he crouched in front of her and said, very quietly, Mara, can you walk? Yes. Can you stand in the hall for an hour? Yes. Do you want to? No. Do it anyway? Yes. He almost smiled. Good. She got up. Mistress Pell had laid out the dress, the one from the bench, not her mother's, and Mara let herself be dressed. It was the first time in her life that someone had helped her into clothes. It felt absurd. It felt like something pretending to happen to her. Mistress Pell was very serious about it, and her hands were very gentle, and by the end Mara was wearing a deep forest green wool that fit her shoulders and fell to her boots and had a collar lined in dark fur. And when she caught sight of herself in the small polished tin mirror over the hearth, she did not recognize the person in it for a full second, and then she did, and she looked away. And Mistress Pell, without comment, tied a plain leather cord at her throat and said, You're ready, lady. Mistress Pell, lady. Thank you. The old woman's mouth tightened, not unkindly. You used to eat at the back stairs of my kitchen, lady, on a stool I hated to look at. I apologize for every morning I did not come out of the pantry and put a bowl in your hand. That wasn't... Yes, it was. I knew what Dina was doing. I knew what Bella was doing. I knew what the Vance girls were doing. I told myself it wasn't my business, and I am telling you now, while I still have the nerve, that it was my business, and I am sorry. You may do with that what you will. Mara looked at her. I don't know what to do with it, Mistress Pell. You don't have to know today, lady. All right. All right. They walked to the hall. It was full. It had been full since the first gray of dawn, because word had gone through the pack a second time after midnight, and nobody in Blackstone had really slept, and everyone who could stand was standing against a wall. Corin was on the dais. Harn Vance had been brought up from his wine cellar. He stood between two of Corin's oldest warriors, his wrists bound with a single leather cord, his face the color of tallow. Lyra was there too. They had allowed her to come. Mistress Pell had dressed her in plain gray, and she sat on a low stool beside the dais with her hands folded in her lap and her eyes on the floor, and she did not try to catch Mara's eye, and Mara did not try to catch hers. Kael walked in beside Mara. He did not walk ahead of her. He walked at her shoulder, the left shoulder, the one that was going to learn to carry a Luna's weight, and Roan walked 3 paces behind them with his hand on the pommel of his sword, and the hall came to its feet as they passed, and it did not speak. At the foot of the dais, Kael stopped, and Mara stopped with him, and Corin Blackstone came down the 3 stone steps and knelt. Your Majesty, your Ladyship. Corin, stand up. Yes, Your Majesty. Kael turned his head. Just a little, the way he had that first afternoon when he had walked into this hall and seen her against the back wall, and he looked out over the packed floor. The hall quieted the rest of the way down. Wolves of Blackstone, he said. He did not pitch it loud. He did not have to. You know why I came here? I came to eat your alpha's bread and hear his grievances and drink his mead and ride back to Hollowreach in 3 days' time with a report and a tithe. That is not what is going to happen. What is going to happen is this. He let the silence do a little work. In the last 12 hours, your beta has been discovered to have hired a witch of the southern roads to kill a child of the primordial bloodline who has lived under his kitchen's wall for 16 years. He did this knowing what she was. He did this knowing what would follow if any other pack, any other king, ever learned what Blackstone had been keeping. He did not do it for you. He did it so that his own daughter could stand in this hall as my Luna, instead of the one you see standing beside me now. He was willing to do that, to drag his own daughter into a blood rite in your woods on the chance that it would pull the seal off a girl who had never done him any harm. His daughter almost died for it. The witch did die for it. Your alpha was in the dark. The whole pack was in the dark. You were all of you, every one of you in this hall, going to wake up in a week to the news that one of you had tried to murder a primordial Luna in front of the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, and you were all of you going to answer for it, and not one of you would have known why. The hall made a low sound. Not a word. A sound. I am not going to ask you to answer for it. You were not told. A pack that is not told cannot be blamed for what it does not know. You are not on trial today, Blackstone. Your beta is. Harn Vance made a sound behind his teeth. One of the warriors on his right shifted his weight. Harn Vance. Harn's voice cracked. Your Majesty. Quiet, Harn. I am not asking. Harn went quiet. You were beta of this pack for 21 years. You served 2 alphas. You served the girl's mother in her last year. You stood at that woman's funeral and pretended to grieve. You have in the years since looked 1,000 times at the orphan in your own kitchens, and you have known every single time what she was, and you have chosen every single time to keep her small, because you could not stand the thought of a girl in a gravy apron outranking your daughter. I understand the thought. I do not forgive it. There is a punishment that the old laws allow me to set on you, Harn Vance, and I will not set it, because I do not want the last thing this pack sees of me on this visit to be your head on my sword in your own hall. Your alpha would have to live with that picture, and he does not deserve it. Neither does your daughter. Your Majesty, I said quiet. Harn bit his tongue so hard Mara saw a bead of red come out at the corner of his mouth. You will be stripped, Kyle said, of your rank, of your house, of the Vance name on the Blackstone rolls. You will be walked, bound to the north gate of this compound at midday. You will be given a coat, a week's food, and a knife, and you will be put out onto the road with your daughter. If she goes with you, she goes with you. If she does not, she does not. That is her choice. It will not be yours. You will not return to Blackstone lands for any reason. If you cross the border markers between now and your death, any warrior of this pack or any pack that owes me fealty has my standing order to put you in the ground where you stand. Do you hear me? Sidi iko min kitam. Yes. Say it. I hear you, Your Majesty. Good. Kale's eyes moved from Harn to Lyra. Lyra did not look up from her hands. Her knuckles were white. Lyra Vance. She looked up. You were not told. I believe that. Your father used you. I believe that too. But you stood on a step in this hall yesterday and you called the girl beside me a stain on Blackstone blood in my presence, and you tried to have her whipped out of the hall for standing in a place you thought you owned. Those are your choices. Your father did not make them for you. So. Lyra's eyes were wet. She didn't look away. You have 2 roads, Kyle said. The first is my road. You may choose to walk out of that north gate at midday with your father and share his exile. I will not stop you. The second is the girl's road. He turned his head. Mara. She had known sometime in the last hour that he was going to do this. She had not known exactly when. She had known anyway. She breathed in through her nose, and she looked at Lyra Vance, who was sitting on a low stool in a plain gray dress in front of 300 people with her hands folded in her lap, and she felt 1,000 things at once, and she let herself feel all of them before she spoke. Lyra. Mara. Do you want to go with your father? No. Why not? Lyra's throat worked. Because he used me for a rite he knew could kill me, she said, And when the witch put her hands on me in that water, he was not there. And when I came up, he was not there, and I do not owe him another yard of road. That is not a yes to me. I know, Lyra. I am not your friend. I might never be. I am probably not going to be, because when I close my eyes at night for the rest of my life, I am going to hear you call me a stain on Blackstone blood, and I am going to carry that the way people carry the things they cannot quite put down. Do you understand me? Yes. But I'm not going to have my first act as whatever I am now be to put a 16-year-old girl on a road in winter to die of her father's politics. So, here's what I'm going to do, she breathed. You're going to stay in this hall, not in the Beta's house. That house is over. In the hall. You will eat where the kitchen women eat. You will work where the kitchen women work. You will do Bela's bidding for 1 year, not as a punishment, as a beginning. In that year, you will learn what it is like to carry a tray for a table that does not see you. Not because I want you humiliated, Lyra, because at the end of that year, I want you to be someone I can stand to have in a room. If, at the end of that year, you have become that person, you may come to Hollowreach, and I will find you a place there. If you have not, you will stay in this hall until you have. You are not exiled. You are not pardoned. You are, she looked for the word, in between. Do you accept that? Lyra's eyes overflowed. I accept it. Good. Mara, not now, Lyra. Not now. 1 year from now. Say it then. If you still mean it. Lyra nodded. She did not wipe her face. She sat there with her face wet, and she did not try to make it pretty. And for the first time in 16 years, she looked to Mara like a person could, eventually, very eventually, have a conversation with. Mara turned back to Kael. Her legs were shaking under the green wool, and nobody in the hall could see it, and nobody was going to. That's all I have to say. That's enough. He stepped back, half a pace, giving her the center of the dais alone, and Mara understood, in a single cold private flash, that this was the moment she would remember as the beginning of the rest of her life. Not the hall the day before, not the clearing, not the shift, but this one, standing in a green dress in front of 300 wolves, announcing a mercy she was not sure she believed in yet, because she had decided she would rather be the kind of Luna who had to grow into her own mercies than the kind who never tried them. Alpha Corin. Yes, your ladyship. The Beta's seat on your council is empty now. Yes, lady. Fill it with whoever is next in line by the pack's own reckoning, not mine. I don't know your people. You do. I would like to meet them when they are chosen. Yes, lady. An Alpha. Yes, lady. There is an old tracker in the curing shed who has served this pack for 60 years. His name is Hesh. He stays in that shed as long as he wants it. He eats from your table. He drinks from your cellar. He is never asked to leave. If he dies in that bed this winter, you bury him with the honor of a wolf who carried a Luna, because he did. Yes, lady. Thank you. She stepped back. Kael's hand brushed the small of her back. A steady, brief touch. And she didn't lean into it and didn't pull away from it, and that somehow was the most grown-up thing her body had done all day. Corin turned to his hall. Pack. 300 faces. We have a Luna of the North born in our kitchens. We did not know. We did not see. Every one of us is going to live the rest of our lives inside what we did not see. We are going to live inside it with our heads up, because that is what wolves do, and we are going to do better. Do I have your voice? The voice came. It started in the back, low, the way a pack voice always starts. One old warrior's throat, a second, a third, and it came up through the hall in a slow wave, until every wolf in that room had their voice in it, a wordless, long that was not a cheer and not a chant and not a song exactly, but the sound a pack makes when it has agreed to something together. It broke over Mara like warm water. She did not cry. She was going to have to stop almost crying, she thought. It could not be her whole personality. And then at the back of the hall, one of the young girls, one of the kitchen apprentices, the skinny one with the burn scar on her chin who had once left a honey cake on Mara's palate in a summer nobody had explained to her, lifted her voice above the pack voice and called, clear as a bell, Luna Vale! A beat. And then every voice in the hall, Luna Vale, Luna Vale, Luna Vale. Mara let it happen. She did not raise her hands to stop it. She did not smile. She stood in the green dress, and she let them give her back the name her mother had chosen for her, and she understood for the first time what her mother had been doing when she had pressed a leather cord into an 8-year-old girl's hand in a fever-dark room 16 winters ago. Her mother had been buying her this moment. Her mother had known she could not give her a safe childhood, because a safe childhood for a primordial pup did not exist, and so she had given her a dangerous one instead, on the theory that a dangerous childhood survived was the only foundation a Luna of the old blood was ever going to stand on. You did not get to be this from comfort. You got to be this from kitchens, from slaps, from buckets of bog water and split knuckles in a pallet under a leaning roof. From 16 years of learning, cheek to cheek with the worst of the world, which cruelties you would pass on and which ones you would not. Her mother had not saved her from the hardness of her life. Her mother had, quietly, trusted her to become the person who could stand at the end of it. Mara looked across the dais at Lyra Vance on her stool. Lyra was looking at her now, eyes wet, mouth a thin line. And Mara, because she was not a saint and because she was not going to pretend to be one, did not send a kind face back. She only nodded once, the same small, honest nod she'd given the wolf. I heard you. I am not closing the door. That was all Lyra was going to get from her today. It was, Mara thought, still more than Lyra had given her, ever, in 16 winters. It would have to be enough to start with. They rode the next morning. Harn Vance was walked to the north gate at midday and put out on the road in a poor coat, and he went down the road alone, and the gate was shut behind him, and nobody in the pack watched him go except Corin, from a tower, and what Corin thought about it he did not tell. Hesh stayed. He sat on a bench by his shed fire, and he waved at Mara with his pipe as she rode by, and she leaned out of her saddle. She was an awful rider on her first day, a disaster. Rowan had spent 2 hours that morning teaching her which side of the horse you got on, and she pressed her forehead against Hesh's forehead the way Kael had pressed his against her wolf's, and Hesh smelled of cold pipe and cedar, and she loved him without having to think about it. The way you love someone who has kept a secret for you for 16 winters without ever making you thank him for it. Go on, girl, he said. Don't make a thing of it. Hesh, go on. She went. The road north out of Blackstone ran along the ridge over Cold Run Creek, and as they came up the first rise, she looked back once at the compound, the longhouse, the kitchens, the curing shed, the lean-to behind it where she had slept, the courtyard where Lyra had spit in her hair that morning, all of it laid out below her in the weak winter sun. And she understood with a kind of calm surprise that she was not going to miss it the way she had always thought she would. She was going to miss pieces of it. Hesh's bench, Tess's bowl of goat's milk on the snow, the young kitchen girl who had called her name first in the hall, the way the light hit the back wall of the curing shed at 4 in the afternoon in October, which had, over 16 years, taught her more about the shape of her own patience than any person in her life. She was not going to miss the rest. Mara, Kael had reined up beside her. His horse was blowing in the cold. His face was red-cheeked and tired and calm. And he was, she had been noticing all morning, someone she was going to have to look at carefully, over years, because everything important about him happened in tiny movements at the corner of his mouth. Yes. You ready? No. Good answer. I don't know how to be what I'm going to be, Kael. I don't know how to run a house. I don't know how to talk to other alphas. I don't know which fork? I don't care which fork you pick up. I know you said that. It's easy for you to say that. Fair. I'm going to embarrass you. Mara. Yes. I have been the Alpha King of the North for 8 years. I have been in rooms with every highborn idiot in 6 kingdoms. None of them ever kicked a brazier into a witch's fire to save a sister who had tried to kill her 12 hours before. None of them are ever going to. If you embarrass me by picking up the wrong fork at a table in Hollow Reach, I will buy you a worse fork and tell the table to eat around you. Do you understand me? You are being dramatic. I am being clear. Kael. Yes. Thank you. For what? She thought about the list. She thought about the hall, the knee on the flagstones, the walk through the courtyard, the stone house, the pine path, the brazier, the snow, his forehead against her muzzle. She thought about good girl, said once, quietly, so only she could hear. She thought, I don't know how to say all of that on a ridge in the middle of the morning. She said, for picking me out of the back wall." He looked at her, a long look. The corner of his mouth did its small thing. "Mara Vale." "Yes." "You picked me too. You just didn't know you had." Roan, 2 horses behind them, made a noise that was not a cough. "Ride, Majesty," he called. "The 2 of you are going to have 60 years to be soft at each other. We have a day's ride to the border and we are burning the light." Cale grinned. Actually grinned, brief. The first real grin Mara had seen on his face. And he touched his heels to his horse, and Mara, awfully, clumsily, grimly, touched hers. And her horse went forward because it was a kind horse, and not because she had any idea what she was doing. And they rode. Past the last of the pines, past the standing stone at the edge of Blackstone's border, where a young warrior took off his helm and went to one knee in the snow as she passed, and she nodded at him, and he put his helm back on, and she rode on. Into the open country. Into a life that was not going to be easy, because no life built on top of 16 years of kitchen bruises was going to be easy. There would be crowns in the north who sent wolves for her. There would be nights she would sit up in a strange bed in Hollowreach with Kyl's breath slow beside her, and she would not, for a full hour, believe any of it was real. There would be one morning in the spring, a letter from Blackstone that Lyra Vance had, against all expectation, kept her head down in Bella's kitchen for 96 days straight, and had asked Corin if she could be trusted to carry bread to the old tracker's shed. And Corin had let her, and Hesh had, the first time she brought the bread, said something to her so quietly that nobody else had heard it, and whatever he had said had made Lyra Vance sit down on the bench outside the shed for an hour and cry without covering her face. And that, Corin wrote, was the first hopeful thing he had seen in the Vance line in 21 years. There would be a day, much later, when Mara stood in her own hall in Hollowreach, not this one, and a young girl in a too-big apron with bruises on her knuckles would be brought up to her by a tracker from a southern pack, and Mara would look at the girl and see herself, and she would kneel down in the dress she was wearing, and she would take the girl's hand in both of hers, and she would say, "You are not what they told you you were. You are something older than they have a name for. Come inside. Eat something. We will begin." But all of that was later. This morning was the ridge. This morning was the horse, and the cold, and the man at her shoulder whose wolf had known her wolf through 16 winters of stone, and the road going down toward the open country, and the sound behind her of a pack she was leaving that had, at last, for the first and the last time, called her by the right name. Mara Vale rode out of Blackstone in a green dress and a stolen knife, and a seal that was hers forever now. And she did not look back again. Because looking back was a thing for girls who had been told for 16 years that what was behind them was all they had. She wasn't one of those anymore.